The smell of blood and crushed heather clung to Tala's wool skirts as she stumbled down the highland road, her fingers still trembling from what she'd done. 3 hours into her foraging journey to the eastern cliffs, and the autumn wind had carried a sound that didn't belong, the wet, rattling gasp of a man dying alone. She shouldn't have stopped. Hedge healers who help wolves disappear. Her grandmother's warning echoed in her mind as she quickened her pace toward home, her leather satchel bouncing against her hip. The glass jar inside clinked with every step, still half full of her own blood mixed with his. She could still feel the phantom ache in her vein where the hollow reed had pierced. Please. His voice had been gravel scraped across stone, gold-flecked eyes pleading through the pain. Don't. Let me die like this. Tala had knelt in the heather before her mind could catch up to her hands. The warrior's wound was catastrophic. Claws had opened his abdomen from rib to hip, the edges ragged and weeping. Her yarrow poultices would have been useless. Her dock leaf salves, meaningless. He had minutes, maybe less. The old ritual had whispered from the depths of her memory. The forbidden one. When flesh fails, the vein remembers. She'd done it anyway. Her blood had dripped into the glass collection jar, dark and honest, before flowing through the crude reed into his forearm. The moment their blood touched, the air had crackled. His eyes had snapped fully open, not brown anymore, but molten gold. Not human. Mine, he growled, the word rumbling from his chest like a vow or a curse. Tala had fled before he could fully wake, before she could see his wound knitting closed in that impossible way that meant only one thing, Shifter. And from the wolf head crest stamped into his leather armor, the crowned wolf of Aegisrin, she knew exactly which Shifter she'd saved. Royalty. The Alpha King's bloodline. Now, as her cottage appeared through the mist, small and hidden and safe, she tried to convince herself she'd gotten away with it. She barred the door, doused the fire, and pressed her palm against the birthmark on her collarbone, the red crescent moon she'd kept hidden beneath high collars for 23 years. The mark of the Ironix line. The mark that made her blood dangerous to possess and fatal to reveal. She was good at hiding. She'd been invisible her entire life. She could stay invisible a little longer. 3 weeks passed before the wolves came. Tala was grinding comfrey root in her mortar when she heard the screams, not pain, but shock. Through her shuttered window, she glimpsed massive dire wolves patrolling the village square like they owned it. Black and gray and rust red, each one the size of a draft horse. A man in commander's armor stood at the center, reading from an official scroll in a voice that carried to every cottage on the hill. By order of His Majesty, Lyle Aegisrin, Alpha King of the Northern Realms, this territory is hereby annexed as a royal outpost. All citizens are under the crown's protection. Tala's mortar slipped from her hands, scattering powder across the floor. No. Any who have given service to the crown in the past month are to make themselves known immediately. The commander's eyes lifted to the cottages on the hillside. To her cottage, specifically, as if he could smell her from across the village square. She found the crate on her doorstep that night. Inside, silver leaf worth its weight in gold, moonpetal extract that took decades to cultivate, powdered griffin bone that could heal a dozen mortal wounds. Herbs worth more than her cottage. Worth more than her life. Stamped on the lid in blood-red wax, the wolf and crown seal. Beneath the supplies, a note in angular, aggressive script. You ran. I found you. Your scent is in my veins, little healer, and my wolf will not rest until you are safe within my walls. You saved my life. Now I will save yours, whether you wish it or not. The king. Tala tried to return it the next morning. She dragged the crate to the village magistrate's office, demanded they send it back to wherever it came from. The magistrate, a portly man who'd never shown her anything but disdain, went pale as winter frost. Return a gift from the Alpha King? His laugh came out high and panicked. Girl, do you want the entire village burned? Keep it. Use it. And pray he forgets about you. But he wouldn't forget. She could feel it in the way the air had changed. The way the wolves still circled the village perimeter at night. The way her blood sang strangely in her veins, as if something was pulling at it from the outside. He'd marked her that day on the road, claimed her with his growl and her blood in his body. And 4 days later, when the sound of hoofbeats thundered up the hill accompanied by the howls of a royal hunting pack, Tala knew her invisibility had finally shattered. He had come. Through the gap in her shutters, she watched him dismount. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a predator's fluid grace even in his heavy leather armor. Dark amber hair braided in the warrior fashion, shaved sides, complex braids running along the crown. The same man she'd found bleeding in the heather. Except he wasn't dying anymore. He moved like death itself, controlled and lethal, his gold eyes scanning the hillside until they locked directly onto her window. A slow, devastating smile curved his mouth. He'd known she was watching. Tala Redsir. His voice carried easily across the distance, deeper and rougher than she remembered. I know you're in there. I can smell the lavender oil you used to wash your hair. I can hear your heartbeat from here, racing like a rabbit's. She pressed herself against the wall, pulse hammering. You saved my life, he continued, taking a step closer to her cottage. Gave me your blood when you could have left me to die. And now that blood sings to me, calls me back to you no matter how far I travel. Do you know what that means, little healer? Silence. The entire village had gone quiet, every eye on her cottage. It means you're mine. The bond is already forged. Your scent is woven into my soul. And I don't leave what's mine unprotected. I don't want your protection. The words burst from her before she could stop them. His smile widened, showing a flash of 2 sharp canines. Then you should have let me bleed out in the heather. Too late now. He gestured to the commander, who unfurled another scroll. As of this moment, I'm relocating the royal court to this region. For my health, they'll say. To recover in the clean mountain air. But we both know the truth, don't we, Tala? Her cottage door rattled as if pushed by an invisible hand. No, not invisible. His will, his power, pressing against her wards. I'm not going anywhere, she shouted. I know. His voice turned almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. That's why I'm staying here. Your cottage is now a royal outpost. The surrounding woods are now crown land. And you, Tala Redsir, are under the personal protection of the Alpha King. You can't just. I already have. He turned to his commander. Establish the perimeter. No one enters or leaves without my permission. Double the guard rotation. And send word to the Iron Keep. We'll be here for the foreseeable future. Tala's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, her back against the wall, as the truth crashed over her. He hadn't come to take her away. He'd moved his entire world to trap her here, caged in safety she'd never asked for, bound to a man whose blood now hummed with hers. Through the window, she watched him survey her cottage with the satisfaction of a wolf who'd successfully cornered his prey. And the worst part, the part that made her pulse race for reasons she refused to examine, was the way his gold eyes softened when they found her window again. Like he'd been searching for her his entire life. Like he'd finally come home. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. The wind had teeth that afternoon, sharp enough to cut through Tala's wool cloak as she trudged up the eastern pass. Her basket hung heavy on her arm, half filled with yarrow root and dock leaves, common herbs, the kind that wouldn't draw questions if anyone saw her returning. The kind that didn't whisper of the hidden things she could do, the bloodline she carried in her veins like a curse wrapped in a blessing. She'd learned young to be unremarkable, to fade into the heather and stone, to heal just enough to survive but never enough to be noticed. The cry came from somewhere beyond the next ridge, carried on the wind like the wail of a dying animal. Tala's feet stuttered to a stop. Every instinct she possessed screamed at her to turn around, to hurry back down the mountain to her cottage where the door could be barred and the windows shuttered and the world could bleed itself dry without her involvement. But her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, gentler than the wind, but just as persistent. A healer who walks past suffering is no healer at all. Tala adjusted her basket and climbed. The road beyond the ridge was empty save for the corpse. At least, she thought it was a corpse at first, the way he lay sprawled against the grassy embankment, one arm flung out, the other clutched to his middle where dark blood seeped between his fingers. His leather armor was torn, the metal studs ripped away in places, exposing gashes in the hardened hide beneath. Claw marks. Deep ones. Tala's breath caught. She'd seen wounds like that before, in the 1 year she'd spent working in the lowland villages before fear drove her back to the highlands. Those marks came from shifters. From wolves who'd lost control or never had it to begin with. The smart thing would be to keep walking. Shifter business was dangerous business, and she was neither pack nor kin. Whatever fight had left this man bleeding on a desolate road was none of her concern. She was already kneeling beside him before she'd made the conscious decision to move. His face was turned away, pressed against the stone wall, but she could see the rigid set of his jaw, the tendons standing out in his neck as he fought to stay conscious. His breathing came in shallow, rattling gasps, the sound of a man drowning in his own blood. "Can you hear me?" Tala set down her basket and pressed her fingers to his throat. His pulse fluttered weakly beneath her touch, rabbit fast and thready. Not good. Not good at all. He made a sound that might have been a word, might have been a groan. Tala pulled his hand away from the wound and bit back a curse. The gash ran from just below his ribs to his hip, deep enough that she could see the white gleam of muscle beneath the blood. The edges were ragged, torn rather than cut. Whatever had done this had meant to disembowel him. Her yarrow root and dock leaves mocked her from the basket. She might as well try to patch a dam with cobwebs. Hold on. She pressed both hands over the wound, trying to slow the bleeding, but it pulsed hot and thick between her fingers. Too much. Too fast. He had minutes, maybe less. His hand shot out and clamped around her wrist with shocking strength. His head turned, and she found herself staring into eyes that were wrong, gold-flecked brown that seemed to glow in the gray afternoon light. Not quite human. Not quite anything she'd ever seen. Please. His voice was gravel scraped across stone, rough and desperate. Don't. Let me die like this. Not here. Not alone. Something in those words, in the raw fear beneath them, made her decision. Tala yanked her wrist free and reached for her basket with trembling hands. The glass jar she used for collecting plant sap. The hollow reed she kept for draining infected wounds. Leather cord. Her gutting knife, small and wickedly sharp. "What are you doing?" he rasped, trying to push himself upright. "Saving you or killing us both." She tied the leather cord tight around her upper arm, pulling it with her teeth until the veins in her forearm stood out blue and urgent beneath pale skin. "Don't move." The old ritual whispered through her mind in her grandmother's voice, the forbidden knowledge passed down through the Ironix line in the dark of night, in the secret places where the royal packs couldn't hear. When flesh fails, the vein remembers. Blood calls to blood. The Red River knows no master but life itself. Her grandmother had made her swear never to use it. Had told her stories of wolf makers who'd been hunted down and burned for possessing blood too pure, too potent. Blood that didn't just heal but change things. Tala positioned the point of her knife against her forearm and took a breath that tasted of copper and fear. "Wait," the stranger said, but she'd already cut. The pain was sharp and immediate, but she'd had worse. She held her arm over the glass jar and watched her blood drip into it, dark and honest. The stranger watched too, his gold-flecked eyes wide, his breathing coming faster. "You're insane," he said, but there was something else in his voice now. Hope, maybe. Or hunger. When the jar was half full, Tala wrapped a strip of cloth around the cut. She could tend it properly later, if there was a later, and positioned the hollow reed. She'd done this once before, on a dying sheep when she was 12 years old. Her grandmother had been furious and terrified in equal measure. The sheep had lived, had grown stronger, actually. Unnaturally so. Tala pushed the thought away and focused on finding the thick vein in the stranger's forearm. His armor was in the way. She used her knife to cut through the leather straps, exposing his bare arm. His skin was fever-hot beneath her touch, his muscles corded with tension. "This is going to hurt," she said, and pressed the reed against his vein. His hand shot out and gripped her shoulder hard enough to bruise, but he didn't pull away. She watched the tip of the reed pierce his skin, watched his blood well up dark and wrong, too thick, too sluggish. Poisoned, maybe. Or just dying. She tilted the jar, letting her blood flow down through the reed and into his vein. The moment their blood met inside him, everything changed. The air crackled like lightning about to strike. The stranger's eyes went wide, then wider, the gold overtaking the brown entirely until they blazed like molten metal. His hand on her shoulder tightened, claws extending from his fingertips to prick through her wool cloak. What he started to say, but his voice fractured into something between a growl and a gasp. Tala held steady, counting her heartbeats, watching her blood flow into him. She could feel it somehow, the moment it hit his heart. Feel the way his body seized on it, drank it down, used it to knit flesh and seal wounds and drag him back from the edge of death. She could feel him getting stronger. His other hand came up and wrapped around her throat, not squeezing, just holding, just claiming, and his lips pulled back from his teeth. The canines were too long, too sharp. Definitely Shifter. Definitely Wolf. And then he spoke, his voice dropping into a register that resonated in her chest, in her bones, in some ancient part of her hindbrain that recognized a predator when it saw one. "Mine." Tala's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the jar. That word wasn't a question or a plea. It was a declaration. A claim. The kind of word that changed everything. She pulled the reed free with shaking fingers, letting it clatter to the ground. The stranger's wound was already closing, the torn edges pulling together like they'd been stitched by invisible hands. His breathing steadied. Color flooded back into his face. He was healing. Too fast. Impossibly fast. Because of her blood. Because she was Ironix. Terror finally caught up to Tala's body, flooding her limbs with ice water. She lurched backward, away from his hands, away from those burning gold eyes that tracked her every movement. "Stay down," she said, trying to sound authoritative and managing only breathless. "The transfusion will make you dizzy. You need to. What are you?" His voice was clearer now, stronger. He tried to sit up, and she shoved him back down with both hands against his chest. It was like trying to move a boulder. He could have thrown her off easily, but he let her push him back. "Nobody. I'm nobody." She was already gathering her things with frantic hands, the jar, the reed, her basket. "You were dying on the road. I helped. That's all. Your scent," he inhaled deeply, his eyes falling closed like he was tasting something exquisite. "It's in my blood now. I can feel you inside me. What did you do?" "Saved your life." Tala's fingers found the leather cord, still tied around her arm, and yanked it loose. "You're welcome. Now forget you ever saw me." She turned to run, but his hand caught her cloak. Not grabbing, just touching, holding the fabric like it was something precious. "Wait. I need to know." "You need to rest," Tala interrupted, pulling free. Her eyes caught on the crest stamped into his leather armor, a wolf's head crowned in iron, surrounded by thorn bushes. Her blood went cold. "Gods. You're Aegisrin. The Alpha King's house. The ruling pack. The wolves who hunted down people like her and burned them for having the wrong kind of blood." The stranger's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile if it weren't so sharp. "Does that scare you?" "Yes." The honest answer was out before she could stop it. "Good. Fear means you're smart." He let go of her cloak. "But I won't hurt you. You saved my life. That's a debt I don't take lightly. Then we're even. You'll forget this happened, and I'll I could never forget you. His eyes burned into hers, gold and ancient and entirely too knowing. Your blood is in me now. Your scent. Your essence. Do you understand what that means? She didn't want to understand. Didn't want to know. Tala grabbed her basket and ran. Behind her, she heard him call out, his voice carrying across the highland wind. I'll find you, little healer. I swear it. I'll find you and I'll... But she was already gone, racing down the mountainside like wolves were at her heels. Maybe they were. Maybe they always had been, and she'd just been too good at hiding to notice. Her cottage appeared through the mist, small and safe, and surrounded by the wards she'd spent years weaving into the stones and earth. Wards that would hide her from searching eyes, that would make people's attention slide away like water off glass. She burst through the door and slammed it shut, throwing the bar across with shaking hands. The fire had died down to coals. The shadows pressed close. Tala sank to the floor and pressed both hands over her mouth, trying to muffle the sound of her breathing, trying to make herself small and quiet and invisible again. But she could still feel it, the pull in her blood, like a string had been tied around her heart and someone was testing its strength. She could feel him out there, miles away on the mountain road, growing stronger with every beat of his heart. Every beat fueled by her blood. Stupid, she whispered to the empty room. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Her grandmother had warned her. The old blood was too powerful, too pure. It didn't just heal, it bonded. It claimed. It made wolves into something more than wolves. And now there was a man out there, somewhere in the highlands, with her essence running through his veins. A man who looked at her with gold eyes and said, mine, like it was already decided. A man whose crest marked him as royalty. Tala looked down at her hands, still stained with mingled blood, hers pale, his dark. She should wash it off. Should scrub her skin raw and burn the clothes she was wearing and pretend this afternoon had never happened. Instead, she sat in the dark and wondered how long she had before he came looking. Before he found her. Before her careful invisibility shattered like glass. 3 days, she thought. Maybe a week, if the wound left him weak enough that he had to recover first. She was wrong. It took him 3 weeks, and when he came, he brought the whole damn kingdom with him. The first wolf appeared on the 14th day. Tala was in her garden, harvesting the last of the autumn sage before the frost could claim it, when old Marin from the village came wheezing up the hill. The woman's face was flushed, her eyes wide with the kind of fear that made people do stupid things. Wolves, Marin gasped, clutching her shawl tight around her shoulders. In the square. Big as horses, Tala. Big as houses. Just standing there, watching us. Tala's hands stilled on the sage stems. Watching. Not hunting. Not attacking. Just watching. Marin's voice dropped to a whisper. They're not natural, girl. Their eyes are too knowing. Too human. Shifters. The word sat heavy and unspoken between them. Tala forced her hands to keep moving, to keep cutting and bundling sage like this was normal, like her heart wasn't trying to hammer its way out of her chest. Did they hurt anyone? No. That's what's strange. Old Peter threw a rock at one stupid fool, and it just looked at him. Looked Tala. Like it was disappointed in him. Marin leaned closer, her breath sour with fear. They're looking for something. Or someone. The sage bundle slipped from Tala's fingers. You haven't done anything foolish, have you, girl? Marin's eyes were shrewd despite her fear. Haven't gone meddling in things that aren't your business? No. The lie tasted like copper on her tongue. I keep to myself. You know that. Marin studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Keep it that way. Whatever those beasts want, best to stay invisible until they move on. But they didn't move on. For 3 days, the wolves patrolled the village. 3 days of massive shapes prowling the perimeter, of gold eyes gleaming in the darkness, of the entire village holding its breath and waiting for the attack that never came. On the 4th morning, Tala woke to find the crate on her doorstep. It was made of dark wood, reinforced with iron bands, and stamped across the top in blood-red wax was a seal she recognized from the armor she'd tried so hard to forget, a wolf's head crowned in iron. The Aegisrin crest. Her hands shook as she dragged the crate inside and pried open the lid. The contents made her breath catch. Silverleaf, fresh and green despite the season, worth more than gold for treating poisoned wounds. Moonpetal extract in a crystal vial, the kind that took decades to cultivate and could cure a dozen mortal fevers. Powdered griffin bone wrapped in silk, rare enough that most healers went their entire lives without seeing it. Dried phoenix tears. Essence of unicorn horn. Herbs and medicines she'd only read about in her grandmother's oldest books, the ones written in languages that predated the kingdoms. And beneath it all, a leather purse heavy with gold coins. Tala's legs gave out. She sat hard on her floor, staring at a fortune in medicinal supplies. Enough to establish a proper healing house in the lowlands. Enough to buy a new life somewhere far away from highland roads and dying warriors and gold eyes that haunted her dreams. Enough to make her visible. The note was tucked into the bottom of the crate, written on parchment so fine it was nearly translucent. The script was angular and aggressive, pressed deep into the paper like the writer had been fighting the urge to tear through it. You saved my life. This is inadequate gratitude, but it's a beginning. Use these as you see fit. Heal who you wish. I ask nothing in return. Yet, the king, not a king, not some minor pack lord or distant royal cousin. The king. She'd saved Lyle Aegisrin himself. The Alpha King of the Northern Realms. The wolf who ruled over wolves. And now he was sending her gifts. Tala shoved the crate under her bed and tried to pretend it didn't exist. For 2 days, she went about her routine foraging, grinding herbs, maintaining her wards. She didn't touch the crate. Didn't open it. Didn't let herself think about the small, traitorous part of her that wanted to. On the 3rd day, the magistrate's summons came. Marcus Thrall was a thin, nervous man who'd spent 30 years enforcing the Crown's law in the Highlands with the kind of rigid adherence to rules that came from being too afraid to bend them. He received Tala in his office with the door open and 2 guards standing within earshot, standard procedure for meeting with an unattached woman, but the fear in his eyes suggested other motivations. Miss Redser. He didn't invite her to sit. There have been inquiries. About you. His fingers drummed against his desk, a rapid staccato that betrayed his nerves. Official inquiries. From the capital. The air in the room suddenly felt too thin. I don't know anyone in the capital, Tala said carefully. Nevertheless. Thrall pulled out a scroll from his desk drawer, handling it like it might bite. This arrived 3 days ago. I've been instructed to ensure your well-being, to report any threats to your safety, to provide you with anything you might need. His voice climbed higher with each sentence. Do you understand what I'm saying, Miss Redser? No. You're under the Crown's protection. He said it like a death sentence. Personal protection. The kind that comes from the highest authority. Tala's mouth went dry. I don't want protection. That's irrelevant. Thrall stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Miss Redser, I've served this village for 30 years. 30 years of keeping the peace, of staying beneath notice, of making sure we're too small and too unremarkable for the Crown to care about. And now, he turned to face her, his expression caught between anger and terror. Now we have royal wolves patrolling our streets and sealed orders from the Alpha King himself. Because of you. I didn't ask for this. Then what did you do? The question burst from him like a cork from a bottle. What could possibly make the king of the Northern Realms take an interest in a hedge healer living in the middle of nowhere? Tala said nothing. There was nothing she could say that wouldn't make things worse. Thrall sank back into his chair, suddenly looking older than his years. There's more. A gift was delivered to your cottage 4 days ago. A rather substantial gift. I'm returning it. You can't. His laugh was high and panicked. Don't you understand? You can't return a gift from the Alpha King. To refuse it would be an insult. Insults get villages burned, misread, sir. Insults get people killed. Then what am I supposed to do? Keep it. Use it. And pray to every god you can name that he forgets about you. Thrall's hands shook as he rolled up the scroll. But I don't think he will. Men like that don't forget. They don't let go. They claim. The word echoed in her mind, overlapping with the memory of a rough voice on a mountainside. Mine. Tala left the magistrate's office with her cloak pulled tight and her head down, but she could feel eyes on her as she walked through the village square. Dozens of them. Her neighbors, people she'd known for years, watching her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to fear to something uglier. Blame. She'd brought the wolves to their doorstep. She'd drawn the crown's attention to their quiet, unremarkable village. She'd become visible, and visibility was dangerous for everyone. Old Peter spat on the ground as she passed. Young Willem's mother pulled her son behind her skirts. Even Marin, who'd come to her for healing a dozen times over the years, looked away. Tala climbed the hill to her cottage alone, each step heavier than the last. The wolves were waiting. Not at her door. That would have been too obvious, too threatening. But she could see them in the tree line, massive shapes moving between the trunks. Watching. Guarding. Hunting. She slammed her door shut and pressed her back against it, breathing hard. The crate under her bed seemed to pulse with significance, a physical reminder of the connection she'd forged on that mountainside. The connection she couldn't sever no matter how badly she wanted to. For 3 more days, an uneasy stalemate held. The wolves didn't attack. The village didn't burn. Tala stayed in her cottage and worked on her wards, strengthening them, layering in every scrap of defensive magic her grandmother had taught her. But she could feel it building, the pressure in the air, the sense of something massive bearing down on her, inexorable as a storm front. On the 18th day after the mountainside, the village bells rang. Not the quick clanging of alarm, but the deep, measured tolling reserved for royal visits. For dignitaries. For wolves who wore crowns. Tala stood at her window and watched the procession enter the village square. 20 mounted warriors in the dark leather and iron of the Aegisran house. War wolves, every one of them, moving with the controlled grace of predators who knew exactly how dangerous they were. Behind them, wagons loaded with supplies. And at the front, riding a massive black destrier that looked like it had been carved from midnight itself. Him. Even from a distance, even through the distortion of glass and fear, she recognized him. The way he sat his horse like he was born to it. The dark amber hair braided in the warrior fashion. The set of his shoulders that spoke of absolute confidence. Lyle Aegisran. The Alpha King. And he was looking directly at her cottage. The commander, a huge man with a scar bisecting his face, unfurled a scroll and began to read in a voice that carried to every corner of the village. By order of His Majesty, Lyle Aegisran, Alpha King of the Northern Realms, Sovereign of the Wolf Packs, and Keeper of the Mountain Laws, this territory is hereby designated a royal outpost and placed under the direct protection of the Crown. All citizens are to be considered loyal subjects entitled to the full rights and protections thereof. Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. A royal outpost. Here. In their forgotten corner of the Highlands. Furthermore, the commander continued, His Majesty has declared his intention to establish residence in this region for the foreseeable future to aid in his recovery from recent injuries sustained in the service of the realm. Tala's breath stopped. No. Any who have rendered service to the crown in the past month are to be commended for their loyalty and patriotism. Their contributions will not be forgotten. The commander's eyes lifted to her cottage on the hill, and though his expression didn't change, she saw the message clearly. We know what you did. We know where you are. And there's nowhere left to run. In the square below, Lyle Aegisran dismounted with fluid grace. He spoke quietly to his commander, then to the village magistrate, who'd appeared looking like he was heading to his own execution. The exchange was brief, professional. And then the Alpha King began walking up the hill toward her cottage. He came alone, without guards or weapons visible, his hands loose at his sides. But there was nothing non-threatening about the way he moved, each step deliberate, each movement speaking of absolute certainty that he was the apex predator here, that everyone else was prey. Tala's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had 3 choices: run, hide, or open the door. She'd already tried running. It hadn't worked. And hiding was what she'd done her whole life. Where had it gotten her? She opened the door and stepped out to meet him. He stopped 10 paces away, close enough to speak without shouting, far enough to be courteous. Respectful, even. But his eyes, those impossible gold eyes, tracked over her face like he was memorizing every detail. Tala Redser. Her name in his mouth sounded like a prayer and a threat. We need to talk. You've made yourself very difficult to ignore, Your Majesty. The words came out sharper than she'd intended, edged with the anger she'd been swallowing for 18 days. His mouth quirked. That was the intention, yes. Why? Because you saved my life. He said it simply, like it explained everything. And then you ran from me. I have every reason to run from you. Do you? He took a step closer, and she fought the urge to retreat. I'm not here to hurt you, Tala. I'm here to protect you. I don't need your protection. Yes, he said quietly, you do. You just don't know it yet. And the worst part was the certainty in his voice, like he'd already seen how the story ended, and nothing she could do would change it. Come inside, she heard herself say, the words surprising her as much as him. If we're going to talk, I won't do it with the entire village watching. His smile was sharp enough to cut. As you wish. He followed her into her cottage, and Tala tried not to think about what it meant that she'd just invited a wolf into her den. Or that some small, traitorous part of her was glad he'd come. Her cottage had never felt so small. Lyle Aegisrin filled the space in a way that had nothing to do with his physical size, though he was massive enough, broad-shouldered and tall enough that he had to duck slightly to clear the doorframe. It was the way he moved through her space, his eyes cataloging every detail with the focused attention of a predator learning his territory. The herbs hanging from the rafters. The worn rug before the hearth. The single chair by the window where she took her meals alone. He saw all of it, claimed all of it with his gaze. Tala kept the table between them, her hands pressed flat against the scarred wood to keep them from shaking. You said we needed to talk. Among other things. He hadn't looked at her yet, still studying her cottage like it held secrets he needed to extract. When his eyes finally landed on her face, the intensity made her breath catch. You've been hiding here a long time. I live here. There's a difference. Is there? He moved to the hearth, running his fingers along the mantel where she kept her grandmother's mortar and pestle. These wards are impressive. Old magic. The kind that makes people's attention slide away like water off glass. How long have you been invisible, Tala Redser? The way he said her name, slow, savoring each syllable, made something low in her belly tighten with a feeling she refused to examine. Long enough to know that visibility is dangerous, she said. It can be. He turned to face her, leaning back against the mantel with deceptive casualness. It can also be powerful. Depends on who's watching. And you're watching. Every moment since you ran from me. His voice dropped lower, rougher. Do you know how hard it was to let you go that day? To lie there bleeding and watch you disappear into the heather, your scent fading but never quite gone. You were barely conscious. I was conscious enough to feel your blood enter my veins. Conscious enough to taste you. Conscious enough to know that I'd found something I'd been searching for my entire life without knowing it. He pushed away from the mantel, taking a single step toward her. Just one, but it felt like the distance between them had halved. I should have died on that road, Tala. The wound was mortal. The poison in the claws would have finished what the bleeding started. But you saved me. I'm a healer. It's what I do. No. The word cracked through the space between them. What you did was far more than healing. You used old magic. Blood magic. The kind that's been forbidden for 3 generations because it's too dangerous, too unpredictable. His eyes burned into hers. The kind that only one bloodline can perform. Tala's hand moved instinctively to her collarbone, to where her birthmark lay hidden beneath her blouse. His gaze tracked the movement, and his smile was sharp. Ironix, he said softly. The Wolfmakers. I thought your line was extinct. It is. The lie was automatic, years of practice making it smooth. I'm just a... Don't. He cut her off, his voice gentle but unyielding. Don't lie to me. I can taste your blood in my mouth every time I swallow. I can feel your heartbeat syncopating with mine when you're near. You think I don't know what that means? It doesn't mean anything. It means everything. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, stopping only when the table was the sole barrier between them. Do you know what happened after you left me? After your blood finished its work? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. I healed. Completely. Within hours, the wound that should have killed me was nothing but a scar. But that wasn't all. He held up his hand, and she watched in horror as claws extended from his fingertips, longer than before, sharper, the color of obsidian. My wolf form is stronger, faster, more controlled than it's ever been. And my senses. He inhaled deeply, his eyes falling half-closed. I can smell the lavender oil in your hair, the sage on your fingers, the fear in your sweat. And underneath all of it, something else. Something that calls to every instinct I have. Stop. Her voice came out strangled. Why? His claws retracted, leaving only blunt human fingers that somehow seemed more dangerous. Because it scares you? Because you know what it means. Because it changes nothing. She forced steel into her spine, into her voice. I saved your life. You're grateful. That's all this is. Is that what you think? He laughed, the sound rough and bitter. Tala, I've had my life saved before. 3 times, in fact. I thanked the healers, rewarded them handsomely, and never thought of them again. This, he gestured between them, this is different. This is a bond. A claiming. The moment your blood entered my veins, something locked into place. Like a key finding its lock. Like coming home. I didn't consent to any bond. Neither did I. The words seemed to surprise him as much as her. You think I wanted this? To be obsessed with a woman who lives in the middle of nowhere, who hides behind wards and fear, who runs from me every chance she gets. He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the careful braids. I have a kingdom to run, wars to prevent, alliances to maintain. I don't have time for whatever this is. Then leave. She forced the words out through a throat tight with emotions she couldn't name. Go back to your capital and forget about me. The bond will fade. It has to. That's what I thought. His smile was mirthless. I stayed away for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of trying to focus on court business while your scent haunted me. 2 weeks of my wolf clawing at my control, demanding I come back here, demanding I find you. 2 weeks of lying awake at night, feeling your heartbeat in my chest, and knowing that you were afraid. I'm not. You are. He said it with absolute certainty. And you have every right to be. But not of me, Tala. Never of me. You're the Alpha King, she said flatly. Fear is the only rational response. From others, perhaps. But you saved my life. That makes you mine to protect, not harm. I'm not yours. Aren't you? He pulled something from inside his leather jerkin, a scrap of fabric, worn and blood-stained. Her scarf. The one she'd used to bind his wounds before she ran. You left this behind. Did you know I've carried it with me every day since? That I've used it to track you, to follow the thread of your scent across miles of highland waste. The sight of her scarf in his hands, treated like something precious, made her chest ache in ways she couldn't explain. I want it back. I'll give it to you. He set it carefully on the table between them. Along with everything else you think you want. Your freedom. Your solitude. Your invisibility. He paused. After. After what? After you let me keep you safe. He leaned forward, his hands braced on the table, bringing his face level with hers. There are things you don't know, Tala. Threats you can't see. The attack that nearly killed me wasn't random. Someone wanted me dead. Someone with resources and patience and a network of spies that reaches into my own court. And now, he gestured to the cottage, to the wards, to her. Now they know about you. Ice slid down her spine. How? Because I haven't been subtle. Because I've had wolves guarding your village for weeks. Because I sent you a gift that was inventoried and recorded and witnessed by a dozen people. His voice was grim. Anyone paying attention would know I've taken an interest. And my enemies pay very close attention. Then take your wolves and leave. Let them forget about me. It's too late for that. He straightened, his expression hardening into something that reminded her exactly who she was talking to. Not a wounded man on a mountainside. Not someone she'd saved. But a king. I've already annexed this territory. As of this morning, your village is under crown protection. I've established a garrison in the valley. I've moved part of my court here. He held her gaze. I'm not leaving, Tala. Not until I know you're safe. You can't just, words failed her. You can't just move an entire court because of one person. I'm the Alpha King. I can do exactly that. His smile was sharp. And I have. My advisors think I'm here to recover from my injuries in the clean mountain air. My enemies will think I'm preparing for war by establishing a foothold in the highlands. Only we know the truth. Which is, that I'll burn the entire kingdom to ash before I let anything happen to you. The words hung in the air between them, too heavy, too much. Tala felt like she was drowning. This is insane, she whispered. Probably. He moved around the table with that fluid grace that was both human and other. But I stopped trying to fight it 3 days after you saved me. The bond isn't going away, Tala. It's only getting stronger. And I've learned to trust my instincts. They've kept me alive through 3 assassination attempts and 2 wars. Right now, every instinct I have is screaming that you're important. Essential. Mine. Stop saying that. Why? He was close enough now that she could smell him, leather and smoke, and something wild underneath. Because it's true? Because you can feel it too. She couldn't answer. Because he was right, and that was the terrifying part. Ever since that day on the mountainside, she'd felt something tugging at her, pulling her attention toward the valley where his wolves patrolled. Toward him. Like a compass needle finding north. I won't be kept, she said finally. I won't be caged or displayed or... I'm not asking you to be. His hand came up, hovering near her face, but not quite touching. I'm asking you to let me protect you. To live your life as you always have, but with the security of knowing that nothing can hurt you. Is that really so terrible? You've turned my home into a military outpost. I've turned your home into the safest place in the northern realms, he corrected. There's a difference. And what if I want to leave? Something flickered across his face, pain, maybe, or fear, before the mask of certainty slammed back into place. Then I'll let you go. Eventually. Once the threat is neutralized. Once I know you won't be hunted the moment you step beyond the wards. His jaw tightened. But I won't pretend I'll do it easily. Or willingly. Everything in me rebels against the idea of you walking away. Because of the bond. Because you're mine. The word came out rougher this time, edged with something that sounded like desperation. And I protect what's mine. Tala stared up at him, at this man who'd moved kingdoms for her, who carried her blood-stained scarf like a talisman, who looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. Part of her wanted to rage at him, to throw him out and damn the consequences. Part of her wanted to run again, to disappear into the highlands and hope he'd eventually give up the chase. But a small, traitorous part of her, the part that had felt alone her entire life, that had craved pack and family and belonging, whispered that maybe being claimed wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I need time, she said finally. To think. To process all of this. You have it. He stepped back, giving her space, though the effort looked like it cost him. I'll be in the valley. The garrison commander is Dolph Eldma II. If you need anything at all, send word through him. And if I need you to leave? His smile was sad. Then I'll pretend to. But the wolves stay. The garrison stays. The protection stays. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the latch. One more thing. What? You should know that I've declared you under crown protection. Officially. Which means anyone who threatens you threatens the crown itself. His eyes met hers, gold and ancient and absolutely serious. Anyone who tries to hurt you will answer to me personally. And I promise you, Tala, I'm far more dangerous than anything else in these mountains. He left before she could respond, pulling the door closed behind him with careful gentleness that somehow made his earlier words more terrifying. Tala stood in the sudden silence of her cottage, staring at the blood-stained scarf on her table, and tried to convince herself that her world hadn't just been completely upended. She failed. Through her window, she watched him descend the hill, his commanders falling into formation around him. Watched the way he moved through the village like he owned it, because now, technically, he did. Watched as he mounted his black destrier and turned one last time to look up at her cottage. At her. Even from a distance, she felt the weight of his gaze. The certainty in it. The promise. I protect what's mine. Tala pressed her hand against the glass and wondered when exactly she'd stopped being invisible, and whether she'd ever be invisible again. For 3 days, Tala pretended normalcy was still possible. She foraged in the morning, ground herbs in the afternoon, and tried to ignore the wolves that shadowed her every movement. They were never close enough to crowd her, never threatening, but always there, gray shapes in the tree line, gold eyes watching from the shadows. Dolph Eldma himself, Lyle's massive second-in-command, seemed to personally oversee her protection detail, his scarred face appearing at the edge of her vision with unsettling regularity. The village had taken to avoiding her cottage entirely. No one came for healing. No one brought gossip or traded supplies. She was more isolated now than she'd ever been when she was trying to be invisible. On the 4th morning, she woke to find fresh game hanging on her porch, a brace of rabbits, already cleaned and dressed. No note. No explanation. Just meat she hadn't hunted, provided by someone who knew she'd been too distracted to forage properly. On the 5th morning, firewood appeared, neatly stacked against the side of her cottage. Enough to last the winter. On the 6th morning, she found a wool blanket folded on her doorstep, thick and soft and dyed the deep gray of storm clouds. The weave was too fine to be local work. Court quality. He was taking care of her. From a distance, without demanding acknowledgement or gratitude, he was ensuring she had everything she needed. It should have made her angry. Instead, it made her chest ache with something she refused to name. On the 7th night, he came to her in the dark. Tala woke to the sound of claws clicking against stone, soft, careful, trying not to wake her and failing. She sat up in bed, her heart hammering, and reached for the knife she kept beneath her pillow. The wolf in her doorway was massive, easily the size of a bear, with fur the color of dark amber and eyes that glowed gold in the moonlight filtering through her window. He stood utterly still, watching her with an intelligence that was far too human. Lyle. She said his name without thinking, without questioning how she knew. The wolf's ears pricked forward. Slowly, carefully, he padded into her cottage, each movement controlled and deliberate. Non-threatening. When he reached the foot of her bed, he lowered himself to the floor with a huff of breath that sounded almost relieved. Tala's hand tightened on her knife. What are you doing here? The wolf laid his massive head on his paws and looked up at her with those two knowing eyes. She could see the answer in them. I needed to see you. I needed to know you were safe. I'm fine, she said, though her voice shook slightly. Your guards make sure of that. You didn't need to. He made a low sound in his throat, not quite a growl, more like a protest. Like he was arguing with her even in this form. Tala set the knife aside and pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders. How long have you been out there? Watching. A pause. Then he lifted his head and looked toward the window, toward the tree line beyond. Every night, she guessed, and the way his ears flicked back told her she was right. You've been out there every night since you left. The wolf stood, moved closer, close enough that she could have reached out and touched him. Close enough that she could smell the wild scent of him, pine and earth, and something uniquely wolf. He settled beside her bed, pressing his bulk against the frame like he was trying to get as close as possible without actually climbing in with her. This is insane, she whispered. You're the Alpha King. You have responsibilities. A kingdom to run. You can't spend every night sleeping on my floor. He huffed again, a sound that clearly meant watch me. Despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the anger she'd been nursing for days, Tala felt her lips twitch. Stubborn. The wolf's tail moved once. Agreement, maybe. Or satisfaction that she was talking to him instead of throwing him out. She should have thrown him out. Should have demanded he leave. Should have been terrified of having a predator this large in her cottage while she was vulnerable and half asleep. But the truth was, she'd barely slept since he'd turned her world upside down. And now, with him here, with his solid presence filling her small space, she felt safer than she had in days. The realization terrified her more than his wolf form ever could. I can't do this, she said quietly. I can't be whatever you need me to be. I don't know how. The wolf raised his head, golden eyes fixing on her face. Slowly, deliberately, he shifted. The transformation was horrifying and beautiful in equal measure, bones cracking and reforming, for receding into flesh, the massive wolf compacting down into the shape of a man. In seconds, Lyle knelt beside her bed, naked save for the leather cord tied around his neck bearing a single iron pendant. His skin was fever-warm in the cool night air, and his eyes hadn't changed, still gold, still too intense. I don't need you to be anything, he said, his voice rough from the shift. I just need you to be safe. To be here. To be alive. Why? The question burst from her, sharp with frustration. Why does it matter so much? You barely know me. Because your blood runs in my veins. He said it simply, like it explained everything. Because I can feel your heartbeat when mine races. Because I haven't had a full night's sleep since you ran from me. Because my wolf won't settle unless I know you're protected. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Because when I thought I was dying on that mountainside, the last thing I wanted was to see your face one more time. Tala pulled her blanket tighter, suddenly too aware of how close he was, how little separated them. That's the bond talking. It's not real, isn't it? He shifted to sit properly, leaning back against her bed frame. The movement was casual, comfortable, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Tell me something, Tala. These past 7 days, have you slept well? She didn't answer. Have you been able to think about anything else? To focus on your work without feeling something pulling at you, tugging you toward the valley. His eyes searched her face. Because I haven't. I've tried. Gods know I've tried. I have treaties to negotiate, alliances to maintain, a traitor in my court to root out. But all I can think about is whether you've eaten enough. Whether you're warm at night. Whether you're afraid. I'm always afraid, she admitted. I've been afraid my entire life. Of what? Of being found. Of being used. Of people discovering what my blood can do and deciding they'd rather have it than me. The words spilled out before she could stop them, years of loneliness and fear crystallizing into truth. My grandmother told me stories. About what happened to the Ironix line before we went into hiding. How the packs hunted us. Bred us like livestock. Drained us until there was nothing left. She met his eyes. How do I know you're different? How do I know you won't? Because I would burn first. The words came out hard, absolute. Because the thought of anyone using you, hurting you, makes my wolf want to tear them apart with my bare hands. He leaned forward, his intensity pinning her in place. I won't lie to you, Tala. Yes, your blood makes me stronger. Yes, The bond has made me more volatile, more possessive, harder to control. But I don't want to use you. I want to protect you. There's a difference. Is there? She challenged. You've annexed my home, stationed guards around me, made it impossible for me to leave without your permission. I've given you the safest territory in the Northern Realms. I've ensured no one can threaten you. And you can leave whenever you want. I've never said otherwise. His jaw tightened. Though I'll admit, the thought of you walking away makes every instinct I have scream in protest. Because you need me close. To stay sane. You said so yourself. Yes. He didn't deny it. The bond makes me stronger when you're near, more volatile when you're not. But that's my burden to bear, not yours. If you truly want me gone, if you want all of this gone, I'll pull back the garrison. Remove the guards. He took a breath, the words clearly costing him. I'll leave, and I'll stay away, even if it kills me. Tala studied his face in the moonlight, looking for the lie, for the manipulation. But all she saw was exhaustion and sincerity and something that looked like pain. Why? She asked again, softer this time. Why would you do that? If the bond makes you need me. Because you deserve the choice. His hand moved like he wanted to reach for her, then fell back to his side. Because taking it from you would make me the monster you're afraid I am. Because... He stopped, something vulnerable flickering across his features. Because I've been alone my entire life, Tala. Surrounded by people, yes. By advisors and warriors and courtiers who would die for their king. But alone in all the ways that matter. And then I woke up on a mountainside with your blood in my veins and your scent in my lungs, and for the first time in 32 years, I didn't feel alone anymore. The raw honesty in his voice made her chest ache. I'm not asking you to love me, he continued quietly. I'm not even asking you to like me. I'm just asking you to let me keep you safe. To let me stay close enough that my wolf doesn't claw me apart from the inside. And in return, he gestured around her cottage. You can have anything. Everything. Whatever you need to be happy. I'll give it to you. I don't want things, Tala said. I never have. Then what do you want? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. What did she want? She'd spent so long hiding, so long being invisible, that she'd forgotten to ask herself that question. I want to heal, she said finally. Openly. Without fear of being discovered or hunted. I want to help people without wondering if every patient might be the one who turns me in. She looked down at her hands. I want to belong somewhere. To someone. To stop being afraid all the time. Then belong to me. The words were soft, but utterly certain. Be mine, and I swear to you, no one will dare touch you. No one will hunt you. You can heal openly, freely, with the full protection of the crown behind you. He leaned closer. And you'll never be alone again. That's not belonging, she said. That's being possessed. Is it? His hand finally moved, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face. The touch was gentle, careful, like she was something precious. Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like coming home. Tala closed her eyes against the intensity of his gaze, against the truth in his words. Because he was right, and that was the terrifying part. Ever since that day on the mountainside, something had shifted in her. The solitude she'd cherished had started to feel like loneliness. The safety of her wards had started to feel like a cage. And now here he was, offering her everything she'd been too afraid to want. I need more time, she said finally. You have it. He pulled back, but she could see the effort it cost him. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Will you stay? The words escaped before she could stop them. Tonight. Not as a wolf. Just stay. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, then something warmer, more dangerous. Are you sure? No. She wasn't sure of anything. But she was tired of being afraid. Tired of being alone. And some traitorous part of her wanted to see what it felt like to stop running. Just to sleep, she clarified quickly. Nothing else. Just to sleep, he agreed, but his smile said he understood what she was really asking. Let me get used to this. Let me get used to you. He settled beside her bed again, his back against the frame, close enough that she could feel his warmth, but not touching. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Tala did something that surprised them both. She reached down and touched his shoulder. Just a brief contact, her fingertips against his warm skin. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for the firewood, and the rabbits, and the blanket." His hand came up to cover hers. "You're welcome." They stayed like that, connected by the simple touch, until Tala's breathing evened out and sleep finally claimed her. And if she woke in the gray hours before dawn to find him still there, his hand still wrapped around hers, his gold eyes watching over her with something that looked like devotion. Well, she was too tired to be afraid of it anymore. Outside, the wolves of the garrison howled their approval to the waning moon, and in the valley below, the Alpha King's court settled in for a long stay. Because Lyle Aegisrin had made his choice the moment her blood entered his veins. And he would stay here, in this forgotten corner of the Highlands, for as long as it took to convince her that being claimed by him wasn't a prison. It was freedom. The attack came on the 10th day, swift and brutal as a winter storm. Tala was in her garden when she heard the screams. Not the startled cries of villagers spotting wolves this time, but genuine terror, raw and primal and wrong. She dropped her basket and ran toward the sound, her healer's instincts overriding her sense of self-preservation. The village square was chaos. People scattered in every direction while something dark and massive tore through them like a blade through silk. Not a wolf. The shape was wrong, more man than beast, but corrupted somehow. Silver gleamed at its claws, and where it struck, flesh burned. Silver ash. Poison. The kind made specifically to kill shifters. Dolph Eldma was already there, his massive form shifted into the grey wolf she'd seen patrolling her cottage. He lunged at the attacker, but the thing was fast, impossibly fast. It twisted away from Dolph's jaws and raked silver-coated claws across his shoulder. The big wolf yelped and staggered, smoke rising from the wound. "Get back." Tala didn't recognize her own voice, sharp with command. She was already running forward, her hand diving into the herb pouch at her belt. Silverleaf, the very herb Lyle had sent her. The one that neutralized silver poisoning. The attacker's head snapped toward her, and she got her first clear look at its face. Human mostly. Male. With eyes that had been wolf gold once, but now burned with something fevered and wrong. Ruined. He smiled, revealing teeth filed to points. "There you are," he rasped, his voice like gravel in a meat grinder. "The little healer. The king's precious treasure." He moved toward her with that unnatural speed, and Tala knew with absolute certainty that she was about to die. Then Lyle was between them. She hadn't seen him arrive, hadn't heard him coming. One moment she was staring at her death, the next she was looking at the Alpha King's back, his body positioned to shield her completely. He hadn't shifted, was still in human form, but the growl that rumbled from his chest made the air vibrate. "Run, fell dog," Lyle said, his voice deadly calm. "You've made a mistake." The attacker laughed, a wet, broken sound. "No mistake. Kill her, break you. Break you, claim the crown. Farkas sends his regards." He lunged. What happened next lasted perhaps 3 seconds, but felt like an eternity compressed into a heartbeat. Lyle moved with a speed that defied physics, catching the attacker mid-leap and slamming him into the ground hard enough to crack stone. The assassin's claws flashed up, silver-coated and deadly, but Lyle caught his wrist and twisted. The sound of bones breaking echoed across the square. "You came to my territory," Lyle said, his voice dropping into that inhuman register that made every hair on Tala's body stand on end. "Threatened my people. Touched my second." His hand moved to the assassin's throat. "And you thought you could take what's mine." The crack of the assassin's neck was sickeningly final. Silence fell over the square, broken only by the whimpering of the wounded and the ragged breathing of survivors. Lyle stood slowly, the dead man at his feet, and turned to Tala. His eyes were pure gold now, no brown left at all, and his hands were stained with blood. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough, barely human. I'm fine. But Dolph. I know. He looked past her to where his second lay panting, smoke still rising from the silver burns. Can you help him? Yes, if you give me space to work. Lyle nodded once, then raised his voice to carry across the square. Secure the perimeter. I want every entrance to this village guarded. No one in or out without my personal approval. His commanders moved immediately, warriors flowing into position with military precision. And find out how he got past my wards. Someone was sleeping on watch, and I want to know who. Tala was already kneeling beside Dolph, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. The silver burns were bad, deep gouges that smoked and sizzled against his flesh, but not fatal if she worked fast. She crushed Silverleaf between her palms, mixing it with water from her pouch until it formed a paste. This is going to hurt, she warned. Dolph, still in wolf form, huffed what might have been acknowledgement or resignation. When she pressed the paste to his wounds, he whined but didn't pull away. Lyle crouched beside her, watching her work with that intensity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and protected. You shouldn't have run toward the danger. He needed help. He's a warrior. It's his job to face danger. His hand came up like he wanted to touch her, check her for injuries, but he stopped himself. You could have been killed. So could you. She didn't look up from her work, focusing on spreading the paste evenly. Yet here you are, covered in someone else's blood. That's different. Why? Because you're the king. Because I can't die, he said bluntly. Not easily. Not since your blood made me stronger. But you, his voice roughened. You're human. Fragile. If he'd reached you. He didn't. She finally looked up, meeting those burning gold eyes. You stopped him. Barely. The word came out harsh. He was inside my perimeter, Tala. Inside wards that should have kept him out. Someone betrayed us. Told them where to strike, when to strike, how to get past my defenses. His jaw tightened. And they sent him after you. Not me. Not my commanders. You. The implications settled over her like frost. Because they know about the bond. Because they know you make me stronger. And they think killing you will break me. His laugh was bitter. They're not wrong. If he'd succeeded, if I'd been even a second slower, he stopped, his hands clenching into fists. This is my fault. I should have moved you to the Iron Keep days ago. Should have kept you behind walls that could actually protect you. I don't want to live behind walls. You don't have a choice anymore. He said it gently, but there was iron underneath. Not after this. Farkas Runfell knows about you now. He'll send more assassins, better assassins, and next time I might not be fast enough. He stood, offering her his hand. Pack what you need. We leave within the hour. Lyle. This isn't a negotiation, Tala. His voice softened, but his expression remained unyielding. I've tried to give you space. Tried to let you stay in your cottage with your independence and your illusions of safety. But those illusions just got shattered along with that man's spine. He gestured to the body being removed by his warriors. You're not safe here. You won't be safe anywhere except behind my walls, surrounded by my best warriors, protected by wards that have held against 3 assassination attempts and 2 wars. So I'm your prisoner now? You're my priority. He pulled her to her feet, his grip gentle despite the steel in his words. And priorities get protected, whether they like it or not. Tala wanted to argue. Wanted to rage at him for making decisions about her life without her input. But she'd seen the assassin's eyes, the fevered hatred in them, the single-minded focus on killing her. She'd heard his words, kill her, break you. She was a weapon now. A tool to be used against the Alpha King. And the only safe place for weapons was in an armory. How long, she asked quietly. Until I find the traitor in my court. Until I root out Farkas's spy network. Until I know for certain that you're not being hunted. He paused. However long it takes. That could be months. Years, if necessary. There was no compromise in his voice. I won't lose you to prove a point about your independence. Tala looked around the village square, at the blood staining the cobblestones, at the wounded being tended, at the fear in her neighbors' eyes as they looked at her. She'd brought this to them. Her presence, her connection to the king, her dangerous blood. She'd made them a target. "Give me an hour to gather my things," she said finally. Something like relief flickered across Lyle's face. "Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you." She met his eyes squarely. "I'm doing it because I won't let anyone else get hurt because of me. Whatever the reason, I'll take it." He gestured to one of his commanders. "Have a detachment escort Miss Redser to her cottage. She's not to be out of sight for a single moment." The journey to the Iron Keep took 3 days. They traveled with a full battalion of warriors, 50 mounted soldiers, and twice as many wolves ranging through the forest on either side of the road. Tala rode in the center of the formation, surrounded by layers of protection so thick she could barely see the landscape beyond the wall of leather and fur. Lyle rode beside her the entire way, close enough that their horses' shoulders nearly touched. He didn't speak much, but she could feel his attention on her constantly, checking that she was warm enough, that she had water, that the pace wasn't too hard. It should have been suffocating. Instead, it felt like being wrapped in armor. The Iron Keep revealed itself on the evening of the 3rd day, rising from the mountain like it had been carved from the stone itself. Massive walls of gray granite, reinforced with iron bands that gleamed dully in the fading light. Guard towers at each corner, topped with warriors whose silhouettes looked more wolf than human. And at the center, a fortress that seemed to grow organically from the mountain, its walls seamless with the cliff face behind it. It was beautiful and brutal and utterly impregnable. "Home," Lyle said quietly, watching her take it in. "Or it will be for a while. It looks like a prison. It looks like safety." He urged his horse forward, and the massive iron gates began to swing open. "There's a difference." The interior was nothing like Tala had expected. Instead of dark stone and military austerity, she found courtyards filled with gardens, halls lit by windows cut cunningly into the rock to catch the sun, tapestries depicting forests and hunts and running wolves. It was a fortress, yes, but one designed for living, not just surviving. "Your quarters are in the East Tower," Lyle said, dismounting and offering her his hand. "Highest point in the keep. Best views. Best protection. Best cage, you mean?" His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "Deuce Stormith will be your attendant. She's Pack, a warrior, and one of the few people I trust completely. She'll help you settle in." A woman emerged from the shadows of the courtyard, tall and lean, with white blonde hair braided in intricate patterns and eyes that were more silver than gold. She moved with the fluid grace of a predator, and the sword at her hip looked well used. "Miss Redser." Deuce's voice was surprisingly warm. "Welcome to the Iron Keep. I promise it's not as terrible as it looks." "That's not a high bar," Tala muttered. Deuce's lips twitched. "I like her already. Come, let's get you settled." The king's orders were very specific: comfortable quarters, anything you need, and no one bothering you unless you wish it. And the guards. Outside your door, not inside your rooms. Deuce started toward the tower. The king was very clear on that point. You're to have privacy and peace. Freedom within the walls, if not beyond them. Tala followed, painfully aware of Lyle's eyes on her back. She didn't turn around. Couldn't bear to see whatever expression he was wearing: triumph, relief, or worst of all, concern. The quarters were stunning. A suite of 3 rooms carved into the mountain itself, a sitting area with a fireplace and comfortable chairs, a bedroom with a bed large enough for 3 people, and a workroom already stocked with herbs and supplies. Windows on 2 walls offered sweeping views of the valley below and the mountains beyond. A golden cage, beautiful and inescapable. "The king thought you might want to continue your healing work," Deuce said, gesturing to the workroom. "He's had soldiers asking about a healer for weeks. If you're willing, they'd be grateful for your skills. I'm a prisoner being given busy work. You're a guest being offered purpose." Deuce's expression was serious now. "Look, I won't lie to you. Yes, you're here for your protection. Yes, there are guards and wards and rules. But the king didn't bring you here to lock you in a tower and forget about you. He brought you here because the alternative was watching you die. She moved to the window, looking out at the darkening valley. I've known Lyle Aegisrin for 15 years. I've seen him face down armies without flinching. I've watched him make decisions that cost him everything to save his people. But I've never seen him afraid until he carried you into this keep and ordered your rooms prepared like he was building a shrine. He doesn't fear for me. He fears losing his advantage. Is that what you really think? Du turned to face her, one eyebrow raised. That a man who can bench press a boulder and rip apart enemies with his bare hands is worried about losing a tactical advantage? Gods, you really don't see it, do you? See what? That he's completely undone by you. Du's smile was knowing and a little sad. The bond, the blood, whatever you want to call it, it's made him something he's never been before. Vulnerable. And for a king who's survived 3 assassination attempts through sheer ruthlessness, vulnerability is more terrifying than any assassin's blade. Before Tala could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Du opened it to reveal one of Lyle's commanders, his expression grave. The king requests Miss Redser's presence in his study. When she's ready. Tell him I'm not ready, Tala said. The commander looked pained. He said you'd say that. He said to tell you it's important. About the attack. Tala sighed. Of course it was. Fine. Lead the way. Lyle's study was in the heart of the keep, a circular room lined with maps and books and weapons mounted on the walls like trophies. He stood at a large table in the center, studying what looked like a hand-drawn map of the Highlands with small carved wolves marking various positions. He looked up when she entered, and the relief in his expression was almost painful to witness. You came. Your man said it was important. It is. He gestured to the map. This is Farkas Runfell's territory. He controls the Western Highlands and has been pushing at my borders for years. The attack on you wasn't random, it was calculated. A test. A test of what? Of whether killing you would break me. His finger traced a line across the map. Farkas has spies in my court. At least one, possibly more. They've been feeding him information about us. About the bond. About what you mean to me. I don't mean anything to you. Don't you? He looked up, and the intensity in his gold eyes made her breath catch. Tala, when that assassin went for you, I felt it. In my blood, in my bones, I felt your fear. Felt the danger like it was my own throat being threatened. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that if he'd succeeded, if he'd killed you. He stopped, his hands clenching into fists on the table. There would be no kingdom left. No treaties. No careful balance of power. Just ashes and blood and whatever was left of me after the wolf took over. The rawness in his voice shook her. That's not. It's the truth. He moved around the table, stopping just short of touching her. The bond has made you essential to me. Not as a weapon or a tool or an advantage. As you. And Farkas knows it. He'll keep sending assassins, keep testing my defenses, until he finds a weakness. His voice dropped. I can't let that happen. I can't lose you. So you cage me. So I protect you. He reached out, finally, his hand cupping her cheek with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so dangerous. And I know you hate it. Know you feel trapped. But I'm begging you, give me time. Let me find the traitor. Let me end the threat. And then, he took a breath. Then you can decide. Stay or go. Accept the bond or break it. Whatever you choose, I'll honor it. Even if I choose to leave? Even then. The words clearly cost him. Though I'll probably follow you. At a distance. Invisibly. Making sure you're safe without you knowing. Despite everything, Tala felt her lips twitch. That's creepy. That's love. He said it simply, and the word hung between them like a thrown knife. Or as close to it as I've ever come. I don't know the pretty words, Tala. Don't know how to make this sound like anything other than obsession. But I know that you're the first thing I think about when I wake and the last thing before sleep. I know that your heartbeat has become my favorite sound. And I know that I would rather cut out my own heart than see you hurt. Tala stared at him, at this king who'd moved mountains for her, who'd reorganized his entire kingdom to keep her safe, who was looking at her now like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I. His thumb brushed across her cheek. So we'll figure it out together. One day at a time. Starting with keeping you alive long enough to hate me properly. I don't hate you. You should. It would be easier. Since when has anything about us been easy? His laugh was surprised and genuine. Fair point. He stepped back, letting his hand fall. You should rest. It's been a long journey, and tomorrow we start planning how to end this threat permanently. You think I'm leaving you out of the planning? His smile was sharp. You're the target, Tala. You get a say in how we protect you. It was such a small thing, being included, being asked, being treated like her opinion mattered. But it shifted something in her chest, made the walls around her heart crack just a little wider. Tomorrow, then, she agreed. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. Tala. Yes, thank you. For trusting me enough to come here. I know it wasn't easy. She looked back at him, at this complicated, dangerous, devoted man who'd somehow become the center of her world. Nothing worth having ever is, she said, and left before she could see his expression change. But she felt it, the surge of emotion through the bond, warm and fierce and undeniable. Hope. In the hallway outside, Deuce Dormith smiled and said nothing, just led her back to her golden cage in the sky. And if Tala stood at her window that night, watching wolves patrol the walls below, feeling safer than she had in her entire life. Well, maybe cages weren't always prisons. Sometimes they were fortresses. And sometimes, just sometimes, they were home. 2 weeks in the Iron Keep, and Tala was losing her mind. Not from fear or discomfort. Her quarters were beautiful, Deuce Dormith proved surprisingly good company, and the food was better than anything she'd eaten in her cottage. But the idleness was suffocating. She'd organized her workroom 3 times. She'd cataloged every herb in her collection twice. She'd read through the medical texts Lyle had provided until she could recite them from memory. She was a healer with nothing to heal. The sounds drifted up from below, the clash of training weapons in the courtyard, the shouted commands of drill sergeants, and underneath it all, the occasional cry of pain that made her hands itch with the need to help. Warriors got injured. It was the nature of their work. And somewhere in this fortress, there had to be an infirmary where those injuries were being treated. Probably poorly, if the rumors Do Let Slip were accurate. The keep's physician was competent enough for basic wounds, but he was getting old, his hands shaky, his knowledge limited to what he'd learned 40 years ago. On the 15th morning, Tala made her decision. She waited until the guard rotation changed. She'd been watching their patterns, noting when the hallways were least populated. The 2 warriors stationed outside her door were diligent but predictable. They expected threats from outside, not escape attempts from within. I'm going to rest, she told them, making sure her voice carried the right note of weariness. Please don't disturb me unless it's urgent. They nodded, taking up their positions with the stoic patience of career soldiers. Tala closed her door, counted to 100, then opened the window. The drop to the roof below was only about 8 feet, manageable if she was careful. She'd spent the last 3 days studying the architecture, planning her route. From this roof to the next, down the drainage pipe to the courtyard level, then through the kitchens where the staff was too busy to question a woman in simple clothes carrying a healer's bag. The infirmary was in the lower levels, carved into the mountain itself where the temperature stayed cool and steady. She found it by following the smell, blood and antiseptic, and the particular odor of infected wounds that needed attention. The physician, a gray-haired man with kind eyes and tired shoulders, looked up from the soldier he was bandaging. His surprise lasted only a moment before his expression shifted to relief. You're the healer, he said. Not a question. The one the king brought from the highlands. Tala read, sir. And yes, I'm a healer. She set down her bag and surveyed the room. A dozen beds, 8 of them occupied. Most of the injuries looked like training accidents, sprained joints, deep bruises, one broken arm set poorly. But one soldier in the corner had the gray pallor and shallow breathing of someone fighting infection. I could use the help, the physician admitted. I'm Osric. Been tending warriors here for 30 years, but my hands aren't what they used to be. He held them up. The tremor was visible even from across the room. And we've had more injuries since the increased patrols started. The king has everyone on edge, training harder. Let me see the one with the fever. Tala was already moving toward the gray-faced soldier. Up close, she could see the infected wound on his thigh, a deep gash that had been stitched but was now weeping pus. How long has he been like this? 3 days. I've been treating it with yarrow and honey, but it's not responding. Because yarrow wasn't strong enough. Tala dug through her bag and pulled out a vial of moonpetal extract, the rare medicine from Lyle's gift. This will work better. We need to reopen the wound, drain the infection, then pack it with this. That's moonpetal. Osric's eyes widened. Do you know how rare? I know. And this man needs it more than it needs to sit and used in my room. She was already preparing the extract, mixing it with a paste that would draw out the poison. Hold him steady. This is going to hurt. The soldier screamed when she reopened the wound, but the rush of pus and blood that followed was exactly what she'd expected. She worked quickly, efficiently, cleaning and packing and stitching with the smooth confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times before. By the time she finished, the soldier's breathing had already begun to ease. You're good at this, Osric said quietly. Better than good. I've had practice. Tala moved to the next bed, assessing a poorly set broken arm. This needs to be rebroken and set properly, or he'll never have full use of it again. I know. Osric's hands trembled again. I wasn't sure I could do it without causing more damage. Then let me. She looked up at him. Please. I need to do this. Need to be useful. I'm going mad up in that tower with nothing but books and embroidery. Osric's smile was understanding. The king won't like this. The king doesn't have to know. Oh, he'll know. Osric gestured to the door. He knows everything that happens in this keep. But, he sighed, these men need proper care. And if you're willing to provide it, I won't be the one to stop you. Just be prepared for consequences. Tala spent the next 4 hours working. She reset the broken arm, the soldier bit down on leather and endured. She treated burns, cleaned wounds, mixed salves and tinctures. By the time she finished, every patient was resting more comfortably, and the infirmary smelled less like death and more like healing. She was mixing a batch of fever-reducing tea when the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Lyle stood in the doorway, and the fury radiating from him was almost physical. His eyes were pure gold, no brown left at all, and his hands were clenched at his sides like he was fighting the urge to shift. Out, he said to Osric, his voice dangerously soft. The physician fled. The patients suddenly found their bandages fascinating, their eyes fixed anywhere but on their king. Tala straightened her spine and met his gaze. I'm working. You're supposed to be in your rooms. Safe. Protected. He moved into the infirmary with predatory grace. Do you have any idea what I felt when my guards reported you missing? The terror that ripped through me. I wasn't missing. I was here. You were exposed. He was close enough now that she could see the muscle jumping in his jaw. Anyone could have walked in. Anyone could have seen you working, recognized what you are. You think Farkas doesn't have spies in my own fortress? So I'm supposed to hide forever? Do nothing? Be nothing. The words came out sharper than she'd intended. I'm a healer, Lyle. It's not just what I do, it's who I am. You can lock me in the most beautiful tower in the realm, but if you take away my purpose, you might as well be killing me. Better caged than dead. That's not your choice to make. Her voice rose, and several patients shifted uncomfortably. She forced herself to speak more quietly. You don't get to decide how I live my life. Not even to protect me. Yes, I do. He closed the distance between them. The moment that assassin tried to kill you, the moment I realized how many people want to use you as a weapon against me, I lost the luxury of letting you make dangerous decisions. This isn't dangerous. This is healing. Everything about you is dangerous. To them. To me. To yourself. His hands came up like he wanted to shake her, but he just gripped her shoulders instead. Do you understand what happened when I felt your presence disappear from your tower? My wolf took over. Completely. I shifted in the middle of a council meeting and tore through this fortress following your scent. 3 doors. I destroyed 3 solid oak doors because they were in my way. Tala blinked. That's excessive. That's the bond. His grip tightened, not painful but desperate. That's what you do to me. 1 moment of not knowing where you are, 1 second of thinking you might be in danger, and I become something I can't control. Then maybe you need to work on your control instead of trying to control me. The words hung between them, sharp and challenging. Lyle stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes, anger warring with understanding, fear fighting with respect. You're right, he said finally, and the admission clearly cost him. You're absolutely right. But that doesn't change the fact that you're in danger. Real danger. And I can't, his voice broke slightly. I can't lose you, Tala. I can't. The raw vulnerability in his voice made her anger deflate. She reached up, covering his hands with hers where they still gripped her shoulders. Then help me find a middle ground, she said quietly. I need to heal. I need purpose. But I also understand that there are threats. So help me find a way to do both. He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching her face. Then he pulled her forward and rested his forehead against hers, the gesture intimate and exhausted and strangely tender. You'll be the death of me, he murmured. Probably. But at least you'll die knowing I was useful. His laugh was surprised and genuine. Such comfort. He pulled back, his hands sliding from her shoulders to take her hands instead. Here's the compromise. You can work in the infirmary. You can heal whoever needs it. But he raised a finger when she started to smile. You don't work alone. Ever. I'm assigning a permanent guard detail. Not to watch you. To protect you while you work. That's going to make the patients uncomfortable. Then they can be uncomfortable. It's not negotiable, Tala. His expression hardened. You don't go anywhere in this keep without guards. You don't treat anyone I haven't personally vetted. And if there's even a hint of threat, you retreat immediately. Those are my terms. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the freedom she wanted. But it was something. It was compromise. It was him trying, despite every instinct he had screaming at him to lock her away. I can live with that, she said. Good. He raised her hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent heat racing up her arms. Because I've already stationed Dolph and 3 of his best warriors outside. They'll escort you to and from your rooms. They'll stand post during your work. And they'll report directly to me if anything feels wrong. You already arranged the guards? Before you even agreed to let me work here. His smile was slightly sheepish. I knew you'd win this argument eventually. You're terrifyingly stubborn when you want something. I just wanted to draw out the negotiation so you'd feel like it was your victory. Tala stared at him, torn between exasperation and affection. You manipulative wolf. Alpha King, he corrected. The manipulation comes with the crown. He turned toward the door, then paused. Osric? The physician's voice came from outside, clearly having been listening. Your Majesty? Miss Redser is the new head healer. You'll work under her direction. Her word on medical matters is law. Anyone who questions her answers to me personally. Understood. Completely, Your Majesty. Lyle looked back at Tala, and the pride in his expression made her chest tight. Don't make me regret this. I'll try not to traumatize too many guards with the sight of blood and pus. That's all I ask. He moved toward the door, then stopped one more time. Tala. Yes. Thank you. For pushing back. for not just accepting the cage I was building. His voice dropped lower. I need you to keep doing that. Keep reminding me that protection doesn't mean imprisonment. I'll forget sometimes. The wolf will take over, and I'll want to lock you away where nothing can ever touch you. But I need you to fight me on it. That won't be a problem, she assured him. I'm very good at being difficult. I know. His smile was warm and genuine. It's one of the things I love about you. He left before she could respond to that casually dropped confession, leaving her standing in the middle of the infirmary with her heart racing and her cheeks flushed. One of the patients, a young warrior with a bandaged shoulder, cleared his throat. For what it's worth, miss, we're glad you're here. Old Osric does his best, but... He gestured to his poorly wrapped bandage. He's not what he used to be. Well... Tala pulled herself together, pushing thoughts of Lyle and confessions aside. Let's fix that bandage properly, shall we? And then you can spread the word. The keep has a healer again. A real one. Anyone who needs help is welcome. By evening, word had spread through the fortress like wildfire. The healer in the tower, the king's mysterious guest, the woman he'd moved mountains to protect, was working in the infirmary. And she was good. Better than good. Miraculous. Tala worked until her hands ached and her eyes burned with exhaustion. But for the first time since arriving at the Iron Keep, she felt like herself again. Useful. Needed. Alive. When Dolph finally escorted her back to her rooms, she found a note waiting on her table. The handwriting was angular and aggressive, pressed deep into the paper. You won. I hope you're satisfied. But if you ever disappear like that again, I'm chaining you to my side and calling it protective custody. Sleep well, little healer. You've earned it. L. Tala smiled despite her exhaustion, folded the note carefully, and added it to the growing collection in her drawer, proof that the Alpha King, for all his power and control, was learning to bend. One compromise at a time. The summons came 3 weeks after Tala had claimed her place in the infirmary. The Alpha Summit, Lyle said, standing in her workroom while she ground willow bark into powder. It's held every 5 years. All the major pack leaders attend. Treaties are renewed, disputes are settled, alliances are forged. He paused. And you're coming with me. Tala's pestle stopped mid-grind. I'm not pack. You're mine. That makes you pack. He moved closer, his presence filling the small room. More than that. You're important to me, and I need the other alphas to see that. To understand that threatening you means war with me personally. You want to use me as a political statement. I want to protect you by making you too visible to attack quietly. His hand covered hers on the pestle. Farkas Runfell will be there. If he sees you at my side, sees how the court treats you, he'll understand that killing you won't break me, it'll unleash me. There's a difference. And if he decides to try anyway, then he'll die. Simple. Absolute. But he won't. Not at the summit. There are rules, ancient laws that even Farkas won't break. The gathering is neutral ground. Sacred. His eyes met hers. You'll be as safe there as anywhere in the realm. Safer, because every alpha present will be honor-bound to prevent bloodshed. Tala wanted to argue, but the logic was sound. And a larger part of her, the part that had been locked away first in her cottage and then in this tower, was curious. She'd never seen the great packs gather. Never witnessed the politics that shaped the kingdom. What do I wear? She asked finally. His smile was triumphant. Dua's been preparing options for weeks. She knew you'd agree. Presumptuous. Practical. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that still made her breath catch. Thank you for trusting me with this. Don't make me regret it. I'll try not to. The summit was held in the Vale of Stones, a massive natural amphitheater carved by ancient glaciers, with standing stones arranged in concentric circles that hummed with old magic. Tala rode beside Lyle at the head of their procession, wearing a dress Du had commissioned in deep forest green with silver embroidery that caught the light. It was beautiful and impractical and made her feel like someone important rather than someone hiding. The other packs had already begun to arrive. Their banners flew from camp scattered across the Vale, black and silver for the Munstrider pack, red and gold for the Sun Warden, deep purple for the Shadowfen. And at the far edge, separated from the others by deliberate distance, the grey and white of Runfell. "Stay close," Lyle murmured as they dismounted. "Don't engage with anyone unless I'm present. And if Farkas approaches, don't show fear. He can smell it." Comforting advice. "You wanted to come." His hand settled on her lower back, possessive and protective. "Now you get to see pack politics in action." The opening ceremony was overwhelming, dozens of alphas gathering in the stone circle, each one radiating power and barely controlled violence. They were all dangerous, all deadly, but none of them held themselves quite like Lyle did. He moved through them with the absolute confidence of someone who knew he could destroy any challenger, and the other alphas gave him space accordingly. Tala stayed at his side, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes assessing her, judging her, trying to understand what she was to their king. "Aegisrin." The voice came from behind them, smooth and cold. "You've brought a guest." Tala turned and found herself face to face with Farkas Runfell. He was beautiful in the way apex predators were beautiful, all sharp edges and controlled grace. Paler than Lyle, with white blonde hair and eyes that were more silver than gold. He wore grey armor adorned with silver, and when he smiled, his teeth were too white, too perfect, too sharp. "Farkas." Lyle's voice was carefully neutral. "This is Tala Redser, my healer." Farkas's eyes locked on her, and she felt the assessment in his gaze like a physical touch. "How interesting. I'd heard rumors that you'd taken a particular interest in someone from the Highlands." He stepped closer, and Tala fought the urge to retreat. "May I?" He reached for her hand before she could respond, raising it to his face and inhaling deeply. His eyes widened fractionally, and his smile took on a sharper edge. "Ironix," he breathed, so quietly only she and Lyle could hear. "Gods. I thought the line was extinct." Lyle's hand moved to her waist, pulling her back against him. "Let go of her. Now." Farkas released her hand, but his eyes never left her face. "No wonder you've been stronger lately. More aggressive. I thought it was political posturing, but it's her, isn't it? She's made you more powerful." His laugh was soft and dangerous. "How delicious." The Alpha King bowed to a wolfmaker. "That must be complicated." "What's complicated is you touching what's mine without permission." Lyle's voice dropped into that inhuman register. "Do it again and summit laws won't save you." "Easy, Aegisrin. I meant no offense." But Farkas's smile said otherwise. "I was simply admiring your prize. Though I have to wonder, does she strengthen you voluntarily? Or is she another of your many possessions?" "I'm not a possession." Tala's voice came out steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "And I'm standing right here. If you have questions, address them to me." Farkas's eyes lit with something like approval. "Spirit. I like that." He inclined his head in a mockery of respect. "Forgive me, Miss Redser. I'm simply fascinated by your bloodline. There are so few of you left. Such power, such potential, locked away in fragile human flesh." He glanced at Lyle. "Tell me, does he treat you well? Or does he drain you dry and toss you aside when you're no longer useful?" "He treats me like a person. You should try it sometime." The words were out before she could stop them, sharp and defiant. Several nearby alphas went quiet, turning to watch the exchange. Farkas stared at her for a long moment, then laughed, genuine and delighted. "Oh, she's perfect. Absolutely perfect. No wonder you're obsessed, Lyle. She's got fire." His smile turned calculating. "But fire burns, doesn't it? I wonder how long before you smother it trying to keep it contained." "This conversation is over." Lyle guided Tala away, his hand firm on her back. "Stay away from her, Farkas." "That's not a request." Of course. Farkas called after them. I wouldn't dream of interfering with true love. Though I'll be watching with great interest to see how long it lasts. Once they were out of earshot, Lyle stopped and turned her to face him. Are you all right? He knows what I am. Yes. Which means by tomorrow, half the packs here will know. His jaw tightened. I'm sorry. I'd hoped to keep your bloodline secret longer, but Farkas has always been too clever for his own good. What does this mean? It means you just became the most valuable person in this vale. It means every alpha here is now wondering what your blood could do for their pack. It means, he took a breath, it means I'm not letting you out of my sight for the rest of the summit. He called me your prize. He was trying to provoke me. And you. Lyle's hands came up to frame her face. You're not a prize, Tala. You're not a possession or a tool or anything he tried to make you feel like. You're mine, yes, but that's different. He struggled for words, that's everything. He's right though, isn't he? About you smothering me. Probably. The admission was quiet, honest. I'm trying not to. Trying to give you space and freedom and choice. But every instinct I have wants to lock you away where no one can ever look at you the way Farkas just did. Where no one can assess your worth and find you wanting anything but safe. Tala reached up, covering his hands with hers. Then keep trying. Keep fighting those instincts. Because I'm not going back in a cage, Lyle. Not even a golden one. I know. He pressed his forehead to hers. God's help me, I know. The rest of the summit was a careful dance of politics and posturing. Lyle kept Tala at his side through every meeting, every ceremony, every formal dinner. She felt the weight of eyes constantly assessing her, measuring her, trying to understand her relationship with the Alpha King. And through it all, she felt Farkas watching. Not overtly, not threateningly, but constantly. Like a predator studying prey, learning patterns, identifying weaknesses. On the final night, there was a great feast. Tala wore another of Deuce creations, midnight blue with silver stars, beautiful enough that several alphas had complimented it. She sat at Lyle's right hand, in the place of honor usually reserved for a mate or queen. The message was clear to everyone present. This woman matters to him. Touch her and face consequences. Halfway through the meal, a commotion at the entrance made everyone turn. A messenger, mud-splattered and exhausted, pushed through the crowd and dropped to one knee before Lyle. Your Majesty. Urgent news from the Iron Keep. Lyle's expression hardened. Speak. There's been an incident. One of the court physicians, Hemming Wormblood, was found going through your private papers. When confronted, he fled. We believe he's been passing information to. The messenger's eyes flicked to Farkas, to other parties. The silence that fell was absolute. Lyle stood slowly, his chair scraping against stone. When did this happen? 2 days ago. We've been searching for him, but he vanished. We think he had help. Someone inside the keep who? Enough. Lyle's voice cracked like a whip. We leave. Now. He turned to Tala. Get your things. We're going home. But the summit isn't. The summit is over for us. His eyes blazed gold. If Hemming has been selling information, then Farkas knows everything. The layout of the keep, the guard rotations, your schedule. His hand clenched into a fist. We need to get back before he can use that information. Farkas rose from his seat across the circle, his expression carefully neutral. That's quite an accusation, Aegisrin. To imply I would employ spies. I'm not implying anything. Lyle faced him squarely. I'm stating a fact. Hemming Wormblood has been in your employ for months, feeding you information about my court, my defenses, and his voice dropped dangerously about her. Even if that were true, and I'm not admitting it is, what could I possibly gain from such information? Farkas's smile was cold. We're at peace, you and I. Have been for 5 years. Peace built on fear and mutual destruction, not trust. Lyle gestured to his commanders. Prepare to march. We leave within the hour. Running home to protect your prize? Farkas called out. How predictable. Lyle ignored him, already moving toward the exit with Tala in tow. But his words carried back across the circle, clear and absolute. Touch her, Farkas, and I'll burn your territory, Tash. Every village, every stronghold, every wolf that bears your name. That's not a threat. That's a promise. The journey back to the Iron Keep was brutal. 3 days of hard riding with minimal rest, warriors on high alert, scouts ranging ahead to check for ambushes. Tala rode beside Lyle, watching tension coil tighter in his shoulders with every mile. It might be nothing, she tried once. Maybe Hemming was just curious, not? It's not nothing. His voice was flat, certain. I trusted him. Gave him access to my private chambers, my personal papers. If he's been reporting to Farkas for months. He shook his head. He knows everything, Tala. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every detail about you. Then we'll handle it. Together. He looked at her then, something fierce and grateful in his expression. Together, he agreed. They reached the Iron Keep on the evening of the 3rd day. The fortress looked unchanged, walls solid, guards at their posts, everything exactly as they'd left it. But something felt wrong. Tala couldn't explain it, couldn't put words to the unease crawling up her spine. But as they rode through the gates and into the courtyard, she felt it like a physical weight. Danger. Close and getting closer. Lyle, she said quietly. I feel it too. His hand moved to the sword at his hip. Some things. The first scream cut through the evening air, followed by the clash of steel and the howls of wolves in combat. The keep was under attack. And somewhere in the chaos, Hemming Wormblood smiled and opened the final gate, letting Farkas's army pour into the heart of Lyle's stronghold. The war had come home. The courtyard erupted into chaos. Wolves poured through the gates, not Lyle's warriors, but foreign beasts in gray and white, their eyes burning with bloodlust. Behind them came soldiers in Runfell colors, weapons drawn, moving with the coordinated precision of a planned assault. Betrayal, someone screamed. The gates were opened from inside. Lyle shifted in an instant, his human form exploding into the massive amber wolf she'd seen that first night in her cottage. But larger now, more powerful, his fur seeming to glow with an inner light. He threw himself into the fray, his jaws closing around the throat of an enemy wolf before it could reach Tala. Get to the throne room. Dolph appeared at her side, already half-shifted, his voice distorted by the change. The king will want you behind the inner defenses. I can help. You can live. He shoved her toward the keep entrance. Go. Now. Tala ran. Behind her, the sounds of battle grew louder, snarls and screams, the clash of steel, the wet crunch of bones breaking. She burst through the keep's main entrance and found more chaos inside. Runfell soldiers were everywhere, fighting with Lyle's warriors in the corridors, destroying everything in their path. Someone had planned this perfectly. Timed it for when the king was away, when defenses were focused outward at the summit, when the keep was most vulnerable. A soldier in gray lunged at her from a side corridor. Tala dodged, her healer's knowledge of anatomy guiding her. She knew where to hit, where to hurt. Her fist connected with his throat, and he went down gasping. She grabbed his fallen knife and kept running. The throne room was on the upper level, deep in the heart of the keep. She could reach it if she was fast enough, if she was smart enough. Going somewhere, Miss Redser? Hemming Wormblood stepped into her path, blocking the stairs. The court physician looked different than she remembered. His kind eyes were now cold, his gentle demeanor replaced with something calculating and cruel. He held a small crossbow, the bolt glinting with silver. Hemming. Tala stopped, her stolen knife held ready. Why? Why? He laughed bitterly. Because I've served this kingdom for 40 years and watched younger, less talented healers rise above me. Because the king gave you a hedge which from nowhere, more authority in 3 weeks than I earned in 4 decades. Because Farkas offered me gold and status and respect. His finger tightened on the trigger. And because killing you will destroy Lyle Aegisrin more thoroughly than any army ever could. He trusted you. His mistake. Hemming aimed the crossbow at her heart. Nothing personal, girl. You're simply too valuable to the wrong person. Your death will break him, make him vulnerable, and Farkas will take the crown. Then those of us who helped will finally get what we deserve. You'll never get away with this. I already have. He squeezed the trigger. Tala threw herself sideways, the bolt whistling past her ear to embed in the stone wall. She rolled, came up running, took the stairs 3 at a time with Hemming's curses following her. The throne room doors were barred from inside. She pounded on them, screaming to be let in, until finally they cracked open and Dew Stormith pulled her through. Thank the gods. Dew slammed the door shut and dropped the bar back into place. We thought you were, she stopped, seeing Tala's wild eyes and the stolen knife in her hand. What happened? Hemming. He's with them. He tried to. An explosion of sound from below cut her off. The keep shuddered, and through the throne room windows, Tala could see fire blooming in the courtyard. They're using siege weapons, one of the warriors guarding the room said, his face pale. Inside the keep. They're trying to bring down the walls from within. Where's Lyle? Tala demanded. Still in the courtyard, last I saw. Dew moved to the window. He's holding the main gate with Dolph and the first guard. They're keeping the bulk of the enemy forces outside, but she stopped. Gods. There are so many of them. Tala pressed against the window and looked down at the battle. The courtyard was a writhing mass of wolves and soldiers. She could see Lyle in the center, the largest wolf, his amber fur matted with blood, fighting with a ferocity that was almost frightening. He was magnificent and terrible and holding the line through sheer will and violence. But he was also being pushed back. For every enemy he killed, 2 more seemed to take their place. And in the darkness beyond the gates, she could see more forces massing. Hundreds more. This isn't a raid, she breathed. It's an invasion. Farkas brought his entire army, which means he's violating every treaty, every sacred law. Dew's expression was grim. He's risking everything for this attack. Whatever he thinks you're worth to him, it's worth more than peace. The throne room door shuddered under a sudden impact. Then another. Someone was trying to break through. Reinforcements are coming, one of the warriors said, moving to brace the door. We just have to hold until. The door exploded inward, blown off its hinges by some force Tala couldn't see. Enemy soldiers poured through, and the throne room erupted into close combat. Dew shifted instantly, her silver wolf form throwing itself at the invaders. The other guards followed, the room filling with snarls and screams. Tala pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay out of the way, trying to find a weapon, A hand grabbed her arm and yanked her sideways into the small antechamber off the main room. The door slammed shut, and she found herself face to face with Hemming Wormblood. Persistent, aren't you? He still had the crossbow, but the silver bolt was gone. Instead, he pulled out a knife, long and wicked and coated with something dark. Wolfsbane and silver ash. It'll kill a shifter in minutes. A human in seconds. The king will tear you apart for this. The king is about to have bigger problems. Hemming smiled. Farkas is in the courtyard. Even now, he's moving to engage Lyle personally. And while your maid is distracted, he advanced on her. I'll complete my mission. Tala backed away, her mind racing. She had no weapons, no protection, no way out. The sounds of battle from the main room were growing quieter, which meant either Dew was winning or losing badly. Why do you hate him so much? She asked, trying to buy time. Hate? Hemming laughed. I don't hate Lyle. I just don't love him enough to die poor and forgotten. Farkas promised me a fortune. A position as head healer in his court. Everything the current king denied me. He lunged. Tala dodged, but not fast enough. The knife scored across her arm, a burning line of agony. She gasped, feeling the poison already working, her arm going numb, her vision swimming. Wolfsbane. Strong enough to kill a shifter. Definitely strong enough to kill her. She had minutes at best. Hemming raised the knife for another strike, But the door burst open and Deuce Silver Wolf barreled into him, jaws closing on his arm. He screamed, the knife clattering away, and Dew dragged him down with a snarl that promised violence. Tala slumped against the wall, her poisoned arm hanging useless. The numbness was spreading up her shoulder, toward her heart. She could feel her pulse slowing, her breathing becoming labored. Tala. Dew shifted back to human, leaving Hemming unconscious and bleeding on the floor. No, 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 she saw the wound, the dark poison coating Tala's skin. Where's your medicine bag? Your antidotes. Infirmary. The word came out slurred. Won't make it. You have to. Dew lifted her, supporting her weight. The king will, if you die, her voice broke. He'll destroy everything, including himself. They staggered into the throne room. The fighting had moved elsewhere, leaving only bodies and blood. Dew dragged Tala toward the window, and through her fading vision, she could see the courtyard below. Lyle was still fighting, but now he faced a single opponent, a massive gray wolf, larger than any she'd seen except Lyle himself. Farkas Runfell. The two alphas circled each other, and even from here, Tala could feel the power radiating from them. This wasn't just a fight. It was a challenge for dominance. For the crown. For everything. She watched, helpless and dying, as Farkas lunged. Lyle met him midair, and they crashed together with force enough to crack stone. They fought with savage grace, all teeth and claws and deadly precision. But Farkas was fresh. And Lyle had been fighting for an hour. The gray wolf's jaws closed on Lyle's shoulder, and he used the leverage to throw the Alpha King against the wall. Lyle hit hard, shifted back to human from the impact, and before he could recover, Farkas was human too, a blade in his hand. The same blade Hemming had used on her. Silver and Wolfsbane. No, Tala breathed. Farkas drove the knife into Lyle's chest. The courtyard went silent. Every warrior, every wolf, stopped fighting to watch their king sink to his knees, the poisoned blade buried to the hilt in his heart. Farkas leaned close, said something Tala couldn't hear, then pulled the blade free and let Lyle collapse. No! Louder now. Tala tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't support her. No! She could feel it through the bond, his agony, his shock, his life force bleeding away as the poison spread through his veins. The connection that had sustained them both was fraying, unraveling, dying. I have to get to him, she told Dew. Have to. You're poisoned too. Dew's voice was thick with tears. There's nothing you can do. There's everything I can do. Tala grabbed the table, pulled herself upright through sheer will. I'm a wolf maker. My blood is the antidote. She looked at Dew, her vision already darkening at the edges. Get me to him. Now. Before we both die and Farkas wins. Dew stared at her for one long moment, then nodded. If we're doing this, we're doing it properly. She shifted back to wolf form and lowered herself. Climb on. And hold tight. Tala climbed onto her back, clinging to Dew's fur with her one good arm. The silver wolf launched through the window, a leap that should have killed them both, but Dew landed in the courtyard on all fours, absorbing the impact. The remaining fighters parted as Dew raced toward the king's fallen body, carrying the healer who refused to let him die. Farkas turned, his eyes widening in recognition. Stop her. But his soldiers were too slow, too shocked by the sight of a woman riding a wolf toward their victory. By the time they moved, Dew had reached Lyle's side and Tala was sliding off her back, collapsing next to the Alpha King's still form. His eyes were open but glassy, his breathing so shallow it was almost undetectable. The wound in his chest bubbled with dark blood, and his skin had taken on the gray pallor of approaching death. Lyle. She pressed her hand over his wound, feeling his life slip away beneath her palm. Stay with me. Please. His eyes focused on her face, and she saw recognition flicker. Saw grief. He knew she was poisoned too. Knew they were both dying. Sorry, he rasped. Failed to protect. Shut up and listen. She grabbed the knife from his belt, the one he always carried, sharp and true. I'm going to save you, but it's going to be messy and probably traumatic. Try not to die while I work. Tala, you're dying, yes, which means I have nothing to lose. She pressed the blade to her forearm, the one already poisoned, already numb, and everything to give. She cut deep. Blood welled from Tala's arm, dark and thick with the poison already killing her. But beneath the wolf's bane, beneath the silver ash, her blood was still Ironix. Still pure. Still powerful enough to make kings and break kingdoms. She pressed the wound directly over Lyle's heart, over the hole Farkas's blade had torn through muscle and bone. Drink, she commanded, her voice stronger than it had any right to be. Lyle, drink or we both die here. His eyes focused on her, gold and fading, and she saw the protest forming. Saw him trying to refuse, trying to save what little life she had left by not taking it for himself. Don't you dare, she hissed. Don't you dare give up after everything we've been through. After you moved kingdoms for me. After you promised to protect me. Her voice broke. You can't protect me if you're dead, you stubborn wolf. Something shifted in his expression, resignation or determination. She couldn't tell. His hand came up, weak and trembling, to grip her arm. His mouth found the wound. And he drank. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Power surged through the bond like lightning through copper wire. Tala felt it, her blood entering his system, recognizing the poison there, attacking it with the ferocity of antibodies recognizing infection. But more than that, her blood remembered him, knew him, had been part of him since that first transfusion on the mountainside. And now it came home with reinforcements. Lyle's body arched, his back bowing off the ground. The wound in his chest began to close, not slowly like before, but rapidly, flesh knitting together in seconds. The gray pallor faded from his skin, replaced by fever-hot color. His eyes blazed pure gold, brighter than she'd ever seen them. Around them, the courtyard had gone silent. Every warrior, every wolf, every soldier from both sides stopped fighting to watch the Alpha King drink from his healer's veins. Impossible, Farkas breathed from somewhere nearby. That much poison should have killed him, Tala finished, her voice ringing clear across the courtyard despite her weakness. But I'm Ironix, Wolfmaker, Bloodbinder. And my blood doesn't just heal, it transforms. She looked at Farkas, defiant even as darkness crept into the edges of her vision. You wanted to know what I am? What I can do? She gestured to Lyle, who was still drinking, still changing. Watch. Lyle released her arm with a gasp. For a moment, he simply knelt there, his chest heaving, his whole body trembling with power. Then he stood, and kept standing. His form rippled, shifted, but didn't complete the transformation to wolf. Instead, he hung suspended between larger than human, more than man, something primal and terrifying that should have been impossible. 7 feet tall if he was an inch, muscles corded with inhuman strength, hands tipped with obsidian claws. His face was still recognizable, but changed sharper, more angular, with fangs that extended past his lips. The dire Alpha. The form that existed only in ancient legends, in stories told to frighten children. The shape a Wolfmaker's blood could unlock in the most powerful of alphas. Lyle threw back his head and howled. The sound wasn't quite wolf, wasn't quite human. It was something older, something that resonated in the bones and made every wolf in the courtyard drop to their bellies in instinctive submission. Even Farkas's soldiers backed away, their weapons lowering, their eyes wide with primal fear. Impossible, Farkas said again, but there was terror in his voice now. You can't, that form is a myth. Myths are just truths we've forgotten. Lyle's voice was deeper, rougher, but still his. He looked down at Tala, and the ferocity in his expression softened to something tender. Rest. I'll finish this. Don't kill them all, Tala managed, even as her legs gave out. Dew caught her before she hit the ground. Leave. Witnesses. His smile was sharp and terrible. As you wish. Then he moved. Tala had seen Lyle fight before, had witnessed his speed, his strength, his controlled violence. But this was different. This was a force of nature given form. He crossed the courtyard in a blur, his claws finding the throat of the nearest Runfell soldier before the man could even raise his weapon. Another leap took him to the next enemy, and the next, moving through them like death itself. Farkas shifted, his massive grey wolf form trying to meet the threat. He was large, powerful, dangerous, and alpha in his own right. He wasn't enough. Lyle caught him mid-lunge, one clawed hand closing around the grey wolf's throat. He slammed Farkas into the ground hard enough to crack stone, then leaned down, his fangs inches from the other alpha's vulnerable belly. You came to my home, Lyle growled, his voice carrying to every corner of the courtyard. Threatened my people. Poisoned my mate. Tried to take my crown. His claws pressed deeper, drawing blood. Give me one reason I shouldn't tear you apart right here. Farkas shifted back to human, his hands raised in surrender. The summit laws. You broke those laws when you invaded my keep during the sacred gathering. You broke them when you paid my healer to poison me. You broke every treaty, every sacred vow, every law that keeps us from descending into chaos. Lyle's claws pierced skin, and Farkas gasped. You've earned death a dozen times over. Then do it. Farkas spat, blood on his lips. Kill me and prove you're as much a monster as they say. I am a monster. Lyle's voice was soft, deadly. But I'm her monster. And she asked me to leave witnesses. He pulled back slightly. So you get to live, Farkas Runfell. You get to go back to your territory and tell everyone what happened here. Tell them the Alpha King has a wolf maker. Tell them he's unlocked the dire Alpha form. Tell them that anyone who threatens what's his will face something worse than death. He lifted Farkas by the throat and threw him across the courtyard. The grey Alpha hit the wall and slumped, unconscious or close to it. The rest of you, Lyle addressed the Runfell soldiers, his voice booming with command. You have one chance to leave alive. Take your Alpha and go. Now. If I see any of you on my lands again, I'll consider it a declaration of war. And this time, I'll march on your borders with the dire Alpha at the front. Do you understand? The soldiers scrambled to obey, gathering their wounded and their unconscious Alpha. Within minutes, they were streaming out of the gates, leaving behind their dead and any pretense of dignity. Lyle watched them go, his massive form silhouetted against the firelit courtyard. Then, slowly, he began to shift back. The dire Alpha form melted away, returning him to his normal size, normal shape. By the time he turned back to where Tala lay in Deuce's arms, he was fully human again. And exhausted. He collapsed to his knees beside her, his hands trembling as they reached for her face. Tala. Gods, Tala, stay with me. I'm still here, she mumbled. The poison was fading, her blood, even depleted, was fighting it. But she'd lost so much. Given so much. Everything felt distant and cold. Did we win? Yes. His voice broke. Yes, we won. You saved me. Again. You gave me everything and he gathered her into his arms, holding her against his chest. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have protected you better. Should have seen the betrayal coming. Should have trusted that I'd fight for you just as hard as you fight for me. She managed to get one hand up to his face, her fingers weak against his jaw. We're a team, remember? You protect me, I protect you. That's how this works. You're dying. Probably. She could feel it, the slow shutdown of her systems, the darkness pressing in. But so were you, and I fixed that. So maybe, return the favor. He looked at Dew, desperate. The infirmary. Get Osric. Get every healer in this keep. Already done, Dew said, and Tala realized there were other people around them now. Dolph, his shoulder bandaged. Osric, his medical bag in hand. Other healers, other warriors, all watching their king hold his dying mate. Give her to me, Osric said gently. We'll do everything we can. No. Lyle's arms tightened. I won't let her go. Not again. Not ever. He looked down at Tala, and the raw terror in his eyes was worse than any wound. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to save you. You already did. Tala's eyes were getting heavy, harder to keep open. The bond goes both ways, remember? Your strength for mine. Your life for mine. Just don't let go. She felt him pull her closer, felt the bond flare between them, not just the connection of blood and magic, but something deeper. The thing that had been growing since that first moment on the mountainside, fed by compromise and argument, by tenderness and fury, by a wolf and a healer learning to trust despite every instinct telling them to run. Love. It poured through the bond like sunlight through clear water, strong and pure and absolutely certain. His love for her. Her love for him. The thing that made the bond more than just magic, made it unbreakable. Tala let it fill her, let it push back against the poison and the darkness. Let it remind her body why it needed to keep fighting, keep breathing, keep existing. Because he needed her. And God's help her, she needed him too. Consciousness faded, but the bond remained. As long as that connection held, as long as his heart beat in rhythm with hers, she wasn't alone in the dark. She wasn't dying. She was just resting. And when she woke up, they'd have a kingdom to rebuild. Together. Tala woke to sunlight and the sound of wolves singing. Not howling singing. The harmonics were too complex, too musical. It took her a moment to recognize it as the wolf song, the ancient melody Pax performed after battles, after victories, after losses that needed to be mourned and remembered. She was in her quarters, the tower room with windows on 2 walls. But the bed was larger than she remembered, and there was a familiar weight pressed against her side. Lyle. He was asleep, still in human form, one arm wrapped around her waist and his face buried in her hair. Even unconscious, he held her like he was afraid she'd disappear. The memories flooded back, the battle, the poison, the blood ritual, the dire alpha form. Farkas fleeing with his tail between his legs. And then darkness, and the bond, and Lyle's love pouring into her like a lifeline. She was alive. They both were. Tala shifted slightly, testing her body. Sore, weak, but healing. Her arm where she'd cut herself was bandaged, the wound already knitting together. Her blood was doing what it did best, repairing, restoring, making her stronger. Lyle stirred, his arm tightening reflexively. Then his eyes opened, brown with just flecks of gold, which meant he was calm. At peace. You're awake, he said, his voice rough with sleep and emotion. How long? 3 days. He pushed himself up on one elbow, his hand coming up to cup her face like he needed to touch her to believe she was real. 3 days of you sleeping while every healer in the keep took turns monitoring your recovery. 3 days of me refusing to leave your side because I was terrified you wouldn't wake up. I'm hard to kill. Don't. His voice cracked. Don't joke about it. I watched you dying, Tala. Watched the light fade from your eyes because you gave me everything you had. If the bond hadn't held, if your blood hadn't been strong enough, he stopped, his jaw clenching. I would have followed you. Into death, into darkness, into whatever came next. Because there's no version of existence I want without you in it. Tala reached up, threading her fingers through his hair. Good thing I'm stubborn then. Terrifyingly so. He pressed his forehead to hers. The healers said it was the bond that saved you. That my strength poured into you the same way yours poured into me. That we literally kept each other alive through sheer force of will and blood magic. Romantic. It's something. His laugh was soft and slightly unsteady. You scared 10 years off my life, you know that? You turned into a mythical superwolf. I'd say we're even. He pulled back to look at her, his expression serious. About that, the dire alpha form was terrifying and impressive, and you're never allowed to use it in our bedroom. His smile was surprised and genuine. Our bedroom. Tala looked around, really seeing the room for the first time. Her herbs and medicines were there, on shelves built specifically for them. Her books. Her grandmother's mortar and pestle. But there were also Lyle's things, his weapons mounted on the wall, his clothes in the wardrobe, his scent everywhere. "When did you move in?" she asked. "About 3 seconds after the healers said you'd live." He had the grace to look slightly sheepish. "I told them to combine our quarters. Figured you couldn't argue if you were unconscious. Presumptuous. Practical." His hand slid down to rest over her heart, feeling the steady beat. "I'm done pretending I can sleep without you nearby. Done pretending the bond is something I can control or ignore. Done pretending you're not the center of my entire world." His eyes met hers. "If you want your own space, I'll move out. I'll give you whatever you need." But I'm hoping he stopped, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen him. "I'm hoping you'll let me stay." Tala covered his hand with hers, feeling the calluses from weapons and war, the warmth of his skin against hers. 3 months ago, she'd been alone in a cottage, hiding from the world. Now she was in a fortress, surrounded by wolves, bonded to a king who'd literally transformed into a mythical creature to protect her. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. "Stay," she said simply. The relief that flooded his expression was almost painful to witness. He gathered her close, holding her with a tenderness that seemed impossible from someone so dangerous. "Thank you," he murmured against her hair. "For staying. For fighting. For not giving up on me even when I was being an overbearing, controlling, obsessive wolf. You forgot stubborn and manipulative. Those too." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "But I'm trying to be better. Trying to find balance between protecting you and smothering you. It's a work in progress." "I know." She settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "We both are." They lay like that for a long moment, just breathing, just existing in the same space. Then Lyle spoke again. "There's something I need to ask you. Something important. If it's about moving more furniture in here, the answer is no. You've already colonized half my space. It's not about furniture." He pulled back, and the seriousness in his expression made her pulse quicken. "It's about us. About what comes next." "What do you mean?" "Farkas is defeated. Hemming is in custody. He'll stand trial for treason. The immediate threats are neutralized." He took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "Which means you're free. Free to leave if you want. Free to go back to your cottage or anywhere else in the realm. I won't stop you. Won't follow you. Won't," his voice caught. "Won't trap you in a life you didn't choose." Tala stared at him, at this man who'd reorganized kingdoms for her, who'd fought armies for her, who'd literally transformed himself to protect her. This man who was now offering to let her go, even though it would destroy him. "You're an idiot," she said. He blinked. "What?" "An idiot. A noble, self-sacrificing, completely ridiculous idiot." She sat up, ignoring the protest from her still-healing body. "You think after everything, after the bond, after the battles, after I literally gave you my blood twice and nearly died for you, that I'm just going to walk away? I'm giving you the choice. Then here's my choice." She took his face in both hands, making sure he was looking at her, really seeing her. "I choose you. I choose this. I choose the fortress and the wolves and the terrifying political intrigue. I choose being a wolf maker instead of hiding it. I choose healing your warriors and arguing with you and compromising until we both want to scream." Her voice softened. "I choose loving you, even though you're overbearing and controlling and sometimes forget that I have agency." "You love me." He said it like he'd never dared hope for it. "Obviously. Why else would I put up with all of this?" She gestured around the room, at the fortress beyond. "I could have run a dozen times. Could have refused the bond, refused you, refused everything you offered. But I didn't. Because somewhere between that mountainside and this moment, you stopped being the thing I was running from and became the thing I was running toward." Lyle kissed her then, deep and desperate and tender all at once. When he pulled back, His eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I love you," he said. "In case that wasn't clear. I love you so much it terrifies me. You're my mate, my bond, my everything. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. You already do." She kissed him again, softer this time. "Now, what was that important thing you needed to ask?" He pulled back, suddenly nervous in a way she'd never seen him. Then he slid off the bed and dropped to one knee beside it. Tala's breath caught. "Tala Redser," he said formally, his voice carrying the weight of ceremony. "Wolfmaker, healer, the woman who saved my life and stole my heart. I'm asking you to be more than my mate, more than my bond." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a circlet, silver and simple, etched with wolves running through forest. "I'm asking you to be my queen, to stand beside me not just in private, but in public, to help me rule this kingdom and make it better than it's ever been, to be my equal in all things." His voice dropped lower, more personal. "To marry me and let me spend forever trying to make you happy." Tala stared at the circlet, at the man kneeling before her offering not just his heart, but his crown. Part of her, the girl who'd spent her life hiding, wanted to panic. Wanted to say it was too much, too fast, too public. But the rest of her, the woman who'd learned to fight for what she wanted, knew exactly what her answer was. "Yes," she said, "but on one condition." His smile was radiant. "Anything. I'm not a trophy queen who sits quietly while you make all the decisions. If I'm going to rule beside you, I'm actually going to rule. I want a voice in policy. I want to establish proper healing houses across the realm. I want to find other Ironic survivors and protect them instead of hunting them." She held his gaze. "And I want you to keep arguing with me when you think I'm wrong, because we're better when we challenge each other. Deal?" He slipped the circlet onto her head, and even though it was too large, even though it sat crooked, it felt right. "My alpha queen. My perfect, stubborn, impossible mate." "Your wife," she corrected. "That too." He climbed back into bed and gathered her close, and they stayed like that until Du knocked on the door hours later to inform them that the entire keep was waiting to celebrate their survival and their engagement. The ceremony happened a month later, on the autumn equinox. They held it outdoors, in the same valley where Lyle had first found her cottage. The entire court attended, along with representatives from every major pack, including, surprisingly, Farkas Runfell, who came under a flag of truce to formally acknowledge Lyle's superiority and sue for peace. Tala wore a dress of deep crimson, the color of blood and life and power. The too large circlet had been resized, and it sat perfectly now, marking her as queen. Lyle wore his formal armor, the wolf and crown of Aegisrin polished until it gleamed. They spoke their vows under the open sky, surrounded by wolves and witnesses. When Lyle kissed her, sealing their bond in law as well as magic, the wolves howled their approval so loudly it echoed off the mountains. The feast lasted 3 days. On the final night, Lyle took Tala's hand and led her away from the celebration, into the forest beyond the keep. "Where are we going?" she asked, laughing as he pulled her between trees. "You'll see." They broke through the tree line into a clearing lit by moonlight. And there, waiting, was the pack. Not just Lyle's inner circle, Dew and Dolph and the warriors she'd come to know, but dozens of wolves, hundreds maybe, all gathered in the clearing. Waiting. "What is this?" Tala breathed. "You said you wanted a family," Lyle said quietly. "A pack to call your own. So I'm giving you mine. All of them. They're yours now as much as they're mine. Your pack. Your people." He gestured to the wolves. "They've been waiting to welcome you properly." The wolfmaker who became their queen. One by one, the wolves approached. Each one lowered their head in submission, acknowledging her authority, accepting her, claiming her as pack. By the time the last wolf had paid their respects, Tala was crying. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of belonging. Of finally being part of something larger than herself. "Thank you," she whispered to Lyle. "Thank you," he replied. For choosing this. For choosing me. For teaching an old wolf new tricks. You're not that old. I feel ancient sometimes. He shifted, his form flowing into the massive amber wolf. Then he looked at her expectantly. I can't shift, she reminded him. He made a sound that was distinctly amused, then lowered himself to the ground. An invitation. Tala laughed and climbed onto his back, settling into his fur like she'd done it 1,000 times before. The pack watched, waiting. Then Lyle threw back his head and howled, and the entire pack joined in, a symphony of voices singing to the moon, to the forest, to the wild magic that bound them all. And when he ran, the pack ran with him. Dozens of wolves racing through the moonlit forest, free and fierce and utterly alive. Tala held tight, her arms around Lyle's neck, and felt more than heard his joy through the bond. This was what he'd wanted to share with her, this freedom, this wildness, this connection to something ancient and pure. This was home. They ran until dawn, until the pack began to peel away to their own territories, their own lives. Until it was just Tala and Lyle and the rising sun painting the mountains gold. He shifted back to human in a clearing, catching her as she slid off his back. Happy? He asked. Deliriously. She kissed him, tasting morning and magic. Though I'm going to need to learn to ride a horse better if we're going to make a habit of this. Or I could just carry you every time. Tempting, but impractical. Story of our relationship. He grinned. Tempting but impractical, impossible but inevitable. Romantic poet Wolf. Who knew? Only for you. He scooped her up, carrying her back toward the keep. Ready to go home? Tala looked back at the forest, at the mountains, at the vast wild kingdom that was now hers to help protect and heal. Then she looked at the man carrying her, her mate, her bond, her infuriatingly perfect husband. Yes, she said. Let's go home. 6 months later, Tala stood in the throne room addressing a crowd of healers, young women and men she'd personally recruited and trained. The healing houses she'd envisioned were now real, spreading across the realm, offering hope and care to anyone who needed it. Lyle watched from his throne, pride evident in his expression. When she finished speaking and the healers dispersed, he came to stand beside her. You're building something incredible, he said. We're building it, she corrected. This only works because you gave me the authority and resources to make it happen. I gave you nothing you didn't already deserve. His hand settled on her lower back, and she felt the familiar warmth of the bond pulse between them. Though there is something I should probably tell you. What? The healers have been taking bets on when you'll tell me about the pregnancy. Tala froze. How did you? I can smell it. Have been able to for weeks. His smile was soft. I was waiting for you to tell me when you were ready. But since we're apparently the worst-kept secret in the keep. Tala pressed her hand to her still flat stomach. She'd suspected for a while, but having it confirmed made it real in a way that was both terrifying and wonderful. Are you happy? She asked. Happy doesn't begin to cover it. He gathered her close, his hand joining hers over her stomach. You've given me everything, Tala. Love, purpose, a reason to be better than I was. And now a family. His voice roughened. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm grateful every day that you chose me. We chose each other, she said. And we're going to choose each other every day for the rest of our lives. Promise? Promise. They stood like that, king and queen, wolf and healer, bound by blood and love and a magic older than crowns. Outside, the pack sang to the setting sun, and in the mountains beyond, the realm they'd built together thrived under their combined rule. It wasn't perfect. They still argued, still compromised, still struggled to balance protection with freedom, strength with tenderness. But it was theirs. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Subscribe to see more stories like this and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going.